everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on chapters 140 to 142 of Heaven Official's Blessing, Volume 5, baby! This volume has been so good so far. I think the last set of chapters from last week, I haven't laughed that hard in a long time. I just love them to pieces. I was so enamored. I was in love. I was having the time of my life, and we ended on a cliffhanger. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and tell y'all first and foremost that I'm gonna explain the potential spoiler that is here. It's not a big spoiler because honestly, I had kind of, here's the thing. I'd kind of figured out after I had finished the discussion from last week and I was going through and editing and doing everything, I was going back through and listening to the chapter as I was reading it while I was editing, and some things were starting to stand out and be kind of weird, and I was like, this is kind of strange. And so I wanted to point a couple of things out, but I had really wanted to have an image of Chi Rong to be on the cover of the last volume's thumbnail of the last set of chapters, and I was like, okay, well, I asked Discord if they could find me an image from this last set of chapters that could be used, and the first thing that popped up, I was like, this is not from those chapters, and they were like, oh, never mind. I was like, okay, it's kind of a spoiler, but I don't remember what it was. I barely looked at it. But then the next thing was an image of Fu Yao coming up from behind Shi Lian, and the hashtags on the Twitter post that they posted said Shi Lian and Mu Qing, and I was like, so it's not Fu Yao, is it? And so, first and foremost, on Discord, please, if you are going to post images from chapter sets, please make sure that you check the spoiler tags, the hashtags. Check the hashtags to make sure they are not spoilers, and if they are, please spoiler tag that so I don't see it. Because I was like, well, that solved that mystery, it's Mu Qing. But in all honesty, luckily, it wasn't too big of a surprise, because I kind of had a theory that it was Mu Qing based on a couple of things from the chapters. One, when I went back and listened to the reading, Fu Yao says, I have to go take you. I mean, my general has to find you. And I'm like, okay, well, that was kind of pointing out Mu Qing. The second thing is he doesn't roll his eyes. Fu Yao always rolls his eyes. This one did not. And the other thing was that Shi Lian kept noting something was off. Something was really weird. It was strange. But that also the idea that it's just not acting like Fu Yao. And it makes more sense that the thing that kind of sealed the deal to me, and I kind of said it in the reaction, was that Fu Yao, how could they have escaped when all of Mu Qing's people were on lockdown? So that doesn't make sense. So I think that it's Mu Qing that is with them right now. I don't think it's Fu Yao. The question, of course, is how, why, where is Fu Yao? Why is Mu Qing there? Why is Mu Qing disguised as Fu Yao? I still have lots of questions, but that was a spoiler because it confirmed it for me, and luckily I'd kind of already figured it out before I saw it, but that was a confirmation. So please be very careful when you post in the Discord. Double check the hashtags and make sure, because I look at those, make sure that they are not spoiling anything. And if they are, spoiler tag it so that I don't see it. Others can see it on the Discord, but I don't want to see it. So I was a little bummed that I got a little spoiled on that. But just be very careful, y'all, because I've made it this far without any major spoilers. And so I'm really hoping that nothing else gets spoiled for Volume 5. But luckily, I don't have to wait very long to hopefully find out answers. We're going to get some answers, hopefully, of if this is Mu Qing, why they are posing as Fu Yao, and what the deal with the fetus spirit is. So hopefully we get some answers there. But I did like Anime Annie talking about in the comments that Shi Lian, when Shi Lian was giving the big God speech, it kind of sounded like Galadriel in Fellowship of the Ring being like, you won't have a Dark Lord but a queen. Like, I was just like that big bombastic speech. It sounds a lot like Shi Lian acting like Galadriel, which is a cool imagery, right? But Chi Ying and Shi Lian, I really like Anime Annie pointing this out, that Shi Lian making friends with both Chi Ying, who is Chan Yijin, as well as the Windmaster. They're very different types of friendships. And I like that MXTX kind of gives us these examples of you can have different types of friends in life. Like with Shi Lian and the Windmaster, they both have very compatible personalities. And even though they have nothing in common, they still have very compatible personalities that makes them be really good friends. It's kind of like myself and my best friend. We have nothing in common. nothing, but we have personalities that gel really well. And so I feel like the Windmaster, actually my best friend is a lot like the Windmaster. I'm like, all this extrovert, all this energy. I'm like, yeah, you're definitely like them. So I could see that, right? But then you have Cheng and Lian, who both, their personalities aren't necessarily compatible, but they both are like sword geeks. They're both like, they have an interest maybe in the same things. And so I'm like, that's kind of cool. So it's neat that we see Lian forming these friendships with different people on different levels. That's really, really cool. I liked that a lot. And then Lian can think of a quick strategy, like Lian, like getting Ling Wing cornered, thinking up this quick and clever strategy. But man, when it comes to trying to tell Hua Chong about how he's not made out with him in a temple, Lian just kind of freezes. So I love that Lian's a great strategist until it comes to romance, and then he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. It's just really funny. Sarah Linda pointed out that apparently in a lot of classic BL, there are tropes about one member of the couple becoming smaller and in like a childlike form, and the other has to take care of them. And oftentimes it is the semi or the top that ends up becoming the small child. So apparently that's a trope. I feel like I've read a lot of BL, but apparently I have not, because this is the first time I'm really encountering this scenario happening. So I thought that was cool that Sarah Linda pointed that out, because I didn't realize that was like a narrative thing that happens in a lot of BL. It's definitely, I was very questionable about it at first. I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go. Hua Chong being in a kid form with Lian packing him around. It is surprisingly hilarious, and I love it. So I'm glad MXTX is making it work. Couscous, thank you for the image last week. Talked about that I need to have a drinking game every time I say Yin Yu's name wrong, because I've been calling him Yu like the whole time. It's Yin Yu. Yes, if you all at home want to play a drinking game every time Romania says a name wrong, you will likely have to go to the hospital, because it's probably going to be frequent. But yeah, I thought that was really, really funny. And then, yeah, just talking about Fu Yao not acting like themselves and kind of pointing to maybe it being Mu Qing and the logic. So, yeah, the logic for Mu Qing becoming irritated. Because here's the thing. Mu Qing, by our accounts, what my theory is Mu Qing has recognized Hua Chong all along and knows. I have a theory. My theory is that Mu Qing knows that Hua Chong is the kid from back then, from 800 years ago, that he knows who he is. That's my theory. So it makes sense why Mu Qing, if he is in Fu Yao's body, got so irritated and instantly seeing Hua Chong being like, you're bringing all this misfortune upon Lian. Because I think that Mu Qing does like Lian. He's just a tsundere. And so I feel like Mu Qing has it against Hua Chong because he's blaming him for all the misfortune that's happened to Lian. So Hua Chong being in kid form around Lian now, Mu Qing would have a problem with it. But we don't know, right? And then to answer a lot of your questions, because there have been several people already commenting about what to do with the new content that's come out from MXTX with this story, like the revised edition, whatever. Reiki on Patreon is being super kind, super nice. And they are actually volunteering to compile all of it together for me in like a PDF, all of the extra content translated as they get it from different sources. And so when I'm done with volume 8, I'm going to read the story as it is now, all the way to the end. And when I'm done, I will go back through and see all the changes and we can talk about it and do all that fun stuff. So that is my goal anyway. But for those of you wondering, we do have Patreons, Reiki, who's being super nice and is actually putting that together for me. So I'm very, very grateful. But yeah, I'm going to hide this toy so that my dogs will leave me alone while I read. But I'm really excited. Luckily, I don't feel too spoiled because I kind of had thought when I went back and was editing and was rereading, I was like, wow, this really does not sound like Fu Yao. Maybe it's Mu Qing. And so then if it ends Mu Qing, I don't think that's a huge spoiler. Just be very diligent and careful when you post things so that I don't get spoiled. But I'm very curious as to what the deal is. If it is Mu Qing, what the heck? What's going on? So that remains to be seen, right? But we are going to dive into chapters 140 to 142 of Heaven Official's Blessing. A nice little chunk here and find out what we get. So we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive right in and start Heaven Official's Blessing part 45, y'all. Chapters 140 to 142 here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Chapter 140, Sharp Tongues and Pointed Teeth. The wind swallowed and arrows shredded. What a chapter title! What? Lian heaved a sigh and turned around. Like he knows who it is, right? I wanted to talk to someone, but now that the spiritual communication array of the upper court is in shambles, I don't know any other heavenly official's verbal password. I can't say anything even if I wanted to. Fu Yao, do you remember any heavenly official's verbal password? Just so I can send some news back and let them know I'm here and request for some assistance. Ooh, that lie! Oh! He looked at ease and natural, extremely persuasive, and the gloomy clouds on Fu Yao's face dispersed. He said placatingly, I don't know. The entire heavens is a mess right now. Everyone's busy. Take care of things yourself. Ha ha ha! Just then, Hua Chong spoke up from the side. Gege, this child has been starving for 2 days and he's burning up. Lian walked over to check, and sure enough, Guzi's forehead was so hot an egg could be fried. Instantly, he pulled Qirong up and demanded, how on earth do you take care of kids? Qirong spat on his face covered in blood. It's not like this ancestor's his real dad. It's already incredibly compassionate of me to not have eaten him. Mark me down for merits, quick! I think it's more like he wouldn't have tasted good feverish that you haven't eaten him, Lian commented. On the side, Long Chong hesitated for a moment before speaking up. Is that child sick? How about I take a look? She was also covered in cuts and bruises from the collapsed beams of the dilapidated cottage, but she felt sorry for the child and crawled over. She cradled Guzi in her arms and placed her palm over his head, seeming to be using her chilling body to cool Guzi's fever. Fu Yao walked over with the fetus spirit wrapped in a ball by a talisman in his hand. It's time to go. Long Chong obviously didn't want to leave, but her son was in his hands, so she was helpless. Lian spoke up, wait, don't leave yet, Fu Yao. Are you able to communicate with your general right now? Fu Yao, you looked at him, what do you want? Actually, before he could fully say the word, his hand suddenly stretched out, and fast like lightning, he instantly twisted Fu Yao's arms behind and restrained him in a deadly grip before he continued. I already knew he's in trouble. Fu Yao was careless and allowed himself to be caught, and he was both shocked and furious. You sly! No, this is all by my own strength alone. You can try ambushing me the same way and see if you can hold me down. Hua Chong politely clapped. I agree. Fu Yao was going to roll his eyes from anger. Then why don't you let me go so I can try, huh? Lian straightened his expression. Next time, if there's a chance. Right now, we've got more important things to worry about. Fu Yao, will you help me advise your general to return to the upper court? Return? Fu Yao's anger was forcefully suppressed into a low voice. That's easy for you to say. If the one stuck in the situation was you, would you go back? What would you say if others urged you to return? Go back to be wronged and wait for a conviction? Go back to wait for death? Don't get riled up. I'm being serious, Lian said. I'm not being sarcastic. Your general and I are different. His situation isn't so hopeless to the point of no return. The real bad was him running away. If you can connect with him, tell him I can help him investigate. Fu Yao was stunned. You help him investigate? Yeah, I've done lots of investigations, so I'm somewhat experienced. More experienced than him, anyway, Lian said. Your Highness, need I remind you that after you return to the heavens, how many heavenly officials have you investigated? Fu Yao said. And how many of those heavenly officials have fallen after you've investigated? Lian cleared his throat softly. That's different. The problem doesn't lie with me. If you really didn't commit any crimes, then of course I can prove his innocence. Fu Yao puffed a laugh of exasperation and cut him off. That's enough. It's not like no one knows of the personal grudges between you two. Help him investigate? Would he even have the chance to flip this around then? If you want to use this chance to drag him down and laugh at him, just say so instead of acting all fake. Hearing this, Hua Chong's face grew dark. A moment later, he smiled. Never mind, Gege. This guy doesn't know how to recognize goodness when he sees it. So why waste your breath? Some people are simply born ungrateful and gouge the heart of a man of integrity with their own wretched close-mindedness. He doesn't trust you, and well, I don't have the time to care for him anyway. Let him struggle and figure things out for himself. Fu Yao glanced at him and taunted. Kid? Hua Chong returned his respects and mocked back. Junior official? Oh, shit! Oh my god, this is Heshan all over again! Fu Yao's face dropped slightly. Lian tightened his hold and said gently, well, this and that are two completely different matters. Personal affairs and businesses shouldn't be mixed together. It's one thing if he and I have a personal grudge. Whether he's committed a crime is another thing. Someone like Mu Qing, even though he is narrow-minded, petty, sensitive, and skeptical, has had a bird personality, constantly guessing, doesn't say nice things, likes to nag, is always offending people, and has a lot of people who dislike him, has no friends, can remember small and important details for a long period of time. Ah! Shilly went on with a breath and with a straight face, but in the end he concluded with, but I've known him since we were kids, after all. He's still got principles. Shilling continued, he might spit in the cup of someone he doesn't like, but he would never poison the water to harm others. Hua Chong commented flatly, really? That's still gross, though. Fu Yao was popping veins. No, he would never spit either. Laxatives, then. Shi Lian said. Fu Yao seemed to be suppressing himself. Must you describe him this way? Are you speaking for him or against him? Sorry, I just couldn't think of any better examples at the moment. Shi Lian apologized. Fu Yao struggled a bit, but he couldn't loosen the hold. He demanded in alarm, were you snitching to someone in the heavens earlier? Shi Lian replied heavily, not yet, I was just chatting. Don't worry, I won't harm your general. If he really doesn't want to go back, then why not join me and we can act together? That way there's a witness for anything he'd do. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to clear himself and things would get worse. Just then, there was suddenly a roar of crude laughter from behind him. Qirong was staring at Lan Chong's face and suddenly went mad. I wondered who this was! Isn't this my lady Jian Lan? Lan Chong was holding Guzi in her arms at first, cooling his temperature, but hearing him, she shuddered and her eyes widened. Who are you? How come you also? Qirong snickered. How do I know, please? You almost had to call me little cousin. What, so everyone's turned into our ghost? Fucking around here and there, it's all familiar faces. This world really is small and lively, ha ha! Shi Lian frowned. Qirong, have you gone mad again? Who's Jian Lan? Oh, Cousin Crown Prince, are you blind or are you playing stupid? Look closely at who this is. Oh! It's the #1 maiden of our Shanla, Lady Jian Lan. Her family's all politicians and merchants. Oh my God, from Volume 3! Indescribably grand and glorious. Her looks are so-so, but her name will be on the charts every time there's a Shanla beauty appraisal. So proud, her eyes are grown atop of her head. She saw and cared for no one. She almost entered the harem and was almost elected as a concubine. What? Oh my God! I can't believe I didn't put... Oh my God! Shi Lian's eyes flew to Lan Chong's face. Back then, the king and queen did indeed have the intention of electing a concubine for him, and summoned a number of exquisitely selected girls to enter the palace for a banquet, just to let him see if there was anyone who he might fancy. However, young Shi Lian had his whole heart focused on cultivation, and left the banquet after making only one round. He never even bothered to remember the faces and names of those girls, so he could recall nothing. Lan Chong glanced at Fu Yao, but Fu Yao only humphed. My general said nothing of this. This woman is also a remnant citizen of Shanla, so she must have seen you before in the past. Shi Lian turned to Hua Chong, and he didn't look surprised either, so it didn't seem like it was something he only just found out. Shi Lian turned to Lan Chong and mumbled, were you really? However, Lan Chong hurried and covered her ears and cried, oh, don't say it out loud. Don't use that name to address me. I've long since changed names. Shi Lian was taken aback at first, but dropped his arm and sighed heavily. The daughter from a noble family of bygone years was now a prostitute in the ghost realm. She probably changed her name because she was afraid to bring shame to her dead family, and didn't want to admit that the her of now was still herself. This woman was once his devotee, his citizen. How could he not sigh? Just then he suddenly felt warmth in his hand. He looked down. It was Hua Chong. He wasn't looking at him, but held his hand. Although he was currently in the form of a small child and his body temperature was cool, when this small, cool hand held his, it was infinitely warm. Qirong, however, didn't have any sympathy at all and clicked his tongue. Who would have thought that Lady Jian Lan, who was so out of reach in the past, would turn into such an old and ugly hag now? I never thought you looked that beautiful, and now my eyes were certainly sharp, and you really don't look that great. I might as well ask, who's the dad of this mutt you gave birth to? His words were extremely classless, and Jian Lan's face was growing pale. Qirong continued, it can't be Cousin Crown Prince. No. That cousin of mine probably can't even get it up. That's why he spends all his time pretending he's all chaste with no mind for women. What a faker. How can he have a son? Oh, how can I forget? After Shanla fell, wasn't my lady sold to that kind of place? It must be the seat of some youngin' pleb. Lian couldn't stand this anymore. He was about to go make him shut up, but Jean Lan exploded faster than he did and slapped Qirong soundly. What's all that garbage you're spewing? Qirong's nose bled from that slap, and he glared. You're nothing more than a malice or a menace. And nobody like you dare hit me, who's almost a supreme. Jean Lan spat on his face, and then choking his neck, she slapped him twice again. What a shitty supreme! You sure know how to blow yourself up! Who do you think you are? Think you're even worth to be thought of as equals with the other 3 supremes? What are you even good at? Your thick skin? Of course I dare hit you! Her words stabbed Qirong where it hurt, and Qirong became frustrated too, yelling with his spit flying everywhere. You foul slut! Let go with your chicken claws. This ancestor thinks you're dirty. The two twisted into a fight. However, it was Jian Lan who was pounding Qirong single-sidedly. Qirong was bound by Ruyi and couldn't move a muscle. He howled, Lian, how come you won't stop this fight this time? Where's your saintly heart? Lian had Fu Yao caught in one hand and had his head lowered, talking to Hua Chong, looking like he hadn't heard Qirong's shrieks. Jean Lan kicked at Qirong, her eyes growing red, and spat angrily. Even this old mistress is wasted on plebs. I don't want a worm like you touching a single finger, a creature like you unwanted by everyone. Trash! You think you're good enough to call our people plebs? Who are you calling plebs? Qirong was outraged. Unwanted? Me? Trash? A hussy who's rotten to the bone like you? Have the right to say that to me? Who else but plebs would appreciate a look like yours? Wait, put down that boulder! As they fought, a wave of rumbling roared from the skies, and they all looked up at the same time. Fu Yao demanded, didn't you say you didn't snitch and was only chatting? Hua Chong frowned slightly, humping, coming uninvited. A cackle exploded into the night sky, and everyone shut their eyes from the sudden lightning flash, and when they blinked, not far away was a tall, black-clad heavenly official with a long bow carried on his back who was approaching them in long strides. Your Highness! Lian dropped his sleeve and surreptitiously pushed Hua Chong behind him like, Fengshen, why did you come? He quickly walked up. You suddenly stopped responding, so I made inquiries and found your whereabouts through ripples and spiritual energy. What's going on here? What a mess. Did you run into something? Lian was about to answer when Fengshen noticed Fu Yao seized in his hand, and the Hua Chong was standing behind his person. It was a picture completely outside of his imagination, and he seemed to not know what to be more surprised at. Wait, what? He finally pointed at Hua Chong after all and asked, what's with this child? Lian laughed dryly. Cute, right? Fengshen glared and watched Hua Chong, whose expression didn't match Lian's comment at all. He asked doubtfully, cute? But why do you think he looks, don't you think he looks a lot like, Lian replied easily, like my son, right? When did you have a son? Fengshen was shocked. Lian smiled. I haven't yet. I was saying that if I do have a son, he might be just as cute, right? Fengshen held his hand and smiled. Right. Fengshen. Oh, my lady Lanchong, don't run away, Lian called. Fengshen turned around and saw a woman's shadow jump from Qirong's side, running away wildly. Without a moment of hesitation, he aimed his arrow and locked onto her legs. Yet unexpectedly, perhaps because it sensed its mother and was in danger, the fetus spirit that was tied into a ball by a yellow talisman in Fu Yao's hand suddenly started quivering. It blew up the talisman and shrieked as it lunged at Fengshen. Jean Lan seemed to have run away with her head cut off from panic. And only when she heard its voice did she remember her son was still in the hands of another. She turned around and cried, cuckoo! Was that no? C in C sound Chinese is pronounced as S. So cuckoo sounds like swa, swo, swo, swo. Swo means wrong or mistake. Doubling the word name means acute or kiddish. Swo, swo. This was the first time Lian learned of the fetus spirit's name. So it was called Swo Swo. Fengshen's arrow changed course and shot towards the snow-white fetus spirit. However, there was only a crunching sound, and the fetus spirit flipped over a couple times in the air, hopping onto a nearby tree. It had bitten the arrow between its teeth, and everyone had the chance to see its appearance clearly. Rather than say it was a fetus, it was more like a deformed little monster. Its skin was blanched white like it was brushed with a layer of powder. Its eyes were abnormally big, shining with a peculiar light, and on top of its head were a few yellowing strands of hair. 2 rows of razor-sharp fangs gnawed at Feng Shen's arrow, biting it clean into 2. Then it spat out the shimmering arrowhead, nailing it next to Feng Shen's boots. Then a long, dark red tongue like that of a snake slithered out of its mouth like it was making provocations. Without another word, Feng Shen reached for another arrow and locked onto it. The fetus spirit was crawling up and down the tree like a lizard, rat exceedingly agile. No wonder Fu Yao couldn't catch it so easily. Zhan Lan cried anxiously, "Oh, don't fight him, run!" Only blood parents could care for such disgusting monsters. Feng Shen locked on, loosened the bowstring, and the arrow flew. The little leg of the fetus spirit was nailed through, and it shrieked, unable to crawl any longer. Zhan Lan dashed back, reaching to pull out the arrow, but because her clasp was too low, when she touched the fletchling, she was rebounded back. There were even sparks from the blow. She backed away a couple of steps, but kept going back to pluck relentlessly, erupting splashes of sparks. Feng Shen put away his bow and approached. "All right, time to go back. Don't add any more to our work pile." "Zhan Lan!" Zhan Lan, who was rebounded again, shuddered. When she heard his voice, she stopped moving, quickly turning away. However, Feng Shen pulled back and asked again, "Zhan Lan?" Lian could sense trouble and asked, puzzled, "What's going on?" She mumbled vaguely with her head down, "You've got the wrong person." "What are you talking about? How could I mistake you for anyone else?" he explained. "You look very different now, but how would I still not?" But words got stuck in his throat, because before, when Zhan Lan was Long Chong and covered herself in heavy makeup looking like a wretch, he really didn't recognize her. It couldn't be helped. Feng Shen still looked exactly the same as he did once upon a time, but Zhan Lan's transformation truly was too great. Looks, makeups, manners, speech, class. Even if her blood parents were to stand before her, they might not recognize their precious daughter. Feng Shen was astonished. "It's you. It's really you. It has to be you. I thought you married and were living well. How did you become this way?" Listening to this point, Zhan Lan suddenly turned around and shoved him, cussing, "You motherfucker!" Feng Shen backed away a few steps from her shove, unable to speak. Zhan Lan continued to shove him, pushing his chest back forcefully while she screamed, "I already said I'm not that hag. Do you not understand human words? Are you dumb in the head? What the hell was that you? It's you. It's really you. Can you not pretend to know? Can you not pretend to not know me? Can you not pretend to not recognize me? Old master, please, I beg you, leave me some face. Yeah, all right." Acting like this, she was no different than a shrew on the streets. This was probably too different from the Zhan Long in Feng Shen's memories, so he only looked at her dumbly, unable to speak. Lian was the same. Rong was the one delighted, rolling on the ground, laughing. "Oh my fucking God, Cousin Crown Prince, do you see what's happening? You got cucked by your most loyal dog." Zhan Lan violently stomped on Rong a few times. "Dog, a dog, you're most like a dog." Strictly speaking, Zhan Lan was once selected with the heavy hope of her family on her shoulders, but she never ever formally entered the harem, and thus never elected as a concubine, so Rong's delight made no sense. However, Lian didn't really know what to say anymore. What the fudge? He had never imagined Feng Shen, who would never speak to a woman if he could help it, would actually. Just then the fetus spirit shredded the arrow, nailing it down with a crunch, and lunged at Feng Shen once more. In a moment of carelessness, Feng Shen allowed his arm to be deeply chomped down, and blood immediately seeped out, pouring non-stop. The right arm was the arm that Feng Shen used habitually. To a martial god, a habitually used arm getting injured was nothing. And Feng Shen raised his left hand, ready to strike, when Zhan Lan cried out, "Don't hit it!" Feng Shen's hand abruptly stopped midair, and suddenly a terrifying thought was born. It wasn't just him. Everyone present all came to think the same thing. Feng Shen allowed that fetus spirit to gnaw at his arm like a piranha as he looked to Zhan Lan. "Is this?" "Oh my God, no, no!" Chapter 141, I choose the path I walk. Lian suddenly remembered something. That day at the Great Martial Hall, Long Chong randomly accused everyone. However, she never pointed a finger at Feng Shen, who was standing in the most conspicuous spot. Lian immediately denied it. "He's not!" Disbelief was plain on Fu Yao's face as well. It seemed he hadn't known that Feng Shen and this woman had any connection, and was also dumbfounded. Hearing her speak, he finally snapped out of it. "He hasn't even asked anything, so why did you answer so fast? Please, it's obvious what he was going to ask." Zhan Lan said, "I'm telling you, he's not." However, Feng Shen was looking at the fetus spirit. "What did you call him? Show. The name seemed to have some sort of special meaning. Jianlan opened her mouth and closed it, no longer willing to argue. She said instead, frustrated, "What's a big man like you doing talking so much?" I said, he's not. Who the hell is that eager to recognize their son?" Function replied angrily, "What are you saying? If he is, then of course you'll what? You'll recognize him? You'll raise him?" He was stuck. He lowered his head and looked at the deformed little monster hanging off of his arm. The fetus spirit seemed to bear a particularly deep hatred for him. It was latched onto his arm, tearing and chomping, crying, "Wah, wah, wah." Function didn't know what to do with him. His red, bloodied hand was clenched into a fist. Seeing how he was stuck, looking like he couldn't accept the truth, Jianlan immediately spat, "I already said he's not, and you're still pushing. He's got nothing to do with you, so stop worrying." Qirong yapped, "Bullshit, he must be! See, I wasn't wrong. It's the spawn of a pleb. Everyone come check this out. Function's own son was carved out of his old mommy's belly and turned into a little ghost. I can't believe people actually pray to this shitty sun-gifting Nanyang. Watch out. The more you pray, the more your sons are going to be." Lian raised his hand and Rui sealed off Qirong's mouth. Jianlan also stomped on his head a few times heavily, making him cuss louder. Just then, Guzi blearily woke up and saw Qirong was getting trampled and immediately lunged forward. "Don't step on my dad." Seeing Guzi holding Qirong's head, Jianlan couldn't stop him anymore. Instead, she changed course. She seized the fetus spirit's two blanched little legs and bolted, yelling angrily, "I told you to stop biting, so disobedient!" Function was spacing out and didn't manage to catch them in time. Lian cried out, "Rui, chase!" Rui went to chase. However, only once that white silk bandage flew out did Lian remember that it was binding Qirong. He looked back and sure enough, Qirong had leapt to his feet with Guzi on his head. Looking pleased, he announced, "This ancestor's free again!" Seeing that Function finally snapped out of it, Lian changed his instruction. "Rui, come back after all." Thus, Rui came flying back and, soundly slapped Qirong, a big one. Qirong had just bounced back, but was now whipped to spin 3 times on the spot. He tumbled, covering his face. After sprawling on the ground for a moment, he suddenly went berserk and seized a hold of Rui, shouting, "Even a rag like you dare hit me!" This time, Rui was stuck in his clutch, twisting around. It couldn't twist itself free. It was like Qirong's strength suddenly exploded. Lian was about to take care of him personally when Qirong suddenly realized there was a small child on his head. He instantly yanked Guzi down, holding him like a shield to protect his person. "Don't come a step closer. Come here and I'll strangle him. Hey, look behind you, Cheng. That fucker's gonna die." Shocked, Lian whipped around, and sure enough, Cheng had his brows tightly knitted. His hands were trembling like he was forcing himself to endure something. When Lian looked over, he immediately shouted, "I'm fine." The arousal of demons. The tremors this time seemed to be stronger than all of the times before. In a split-second decision, Lian went back to hold him. Using this chance, Qirong hurriedly escaped with Guzi in his hands. Cheng also seemed to be suffering a throbbing headache covering her ears, and that fetus spirit, under such aggravation, was biting and tearing even more violently. Function had been bitten over 10 mouthfuls now, his blood pouring unceasingly, but he still didn't dare to hit him, using his hand to tightly grab a hold of Jianlan's arm. The fetus spirit, however, didn't hold back and swung its claws around towards Function's face. The clawed scratch was nasty, and Function grunted, covering his wound, unsure if his eyes were injured. Lian was mortified and was about to send forth Rui, but Jian stomped her feet in anger. "If you keep this up, I'm going to get angry." Only after hearing his mother yell did the fetus spirit jump back into her arms, obediently curling up into a bundle. Jianlan gave Function a look and gritted her teeth. "He has nothing to do with you. I'm warning you, don't bother us." Then, with one hand hugging her head and the other hugging her son, the mother and child fled. Seeing this, Fu Yao cried, "Let me go!" Function half knelt on the ground, half covering his face. Lian crouched down next to him with Cheng in his arms. "Are you all right? Let me see your wounds. Were your eyes scratched?" Blood dripped from the cracks of his fingers, and Function replied with his eyes closed, "No, don't ask me." Function, Cheng, the lady Jianlan, what was she talking? Before she finished, Function swung out his fist. A giant crack in the tree next to him was punched in. "I told you not to ask me!" The voice was mixed with resentment. Lian could tell the resentment was directed at him, but he couldn't help but be taken aback. However, Cheng commented coldly, "Who turned your wife and son into ghosts? If you've got fire, go burn the right person." Hearing this, Function raised his head slightly, his eyes red, watching Fu Yao. Taken aback, Fu Yao was instantly furious. What are you looking at? You don't actually think it was my general? What is this bloody luck? He only saw that woman was a remnant citizen of Shanla and had some relation to the royal family, so he lent a helping hand. He wanted to save that fetus spirit, but who knew it was deeply ignorant? Not only did it not want to be saved, it even turned into a fierce. Nothing good came of it. In the end, he ended up stepping in shit. Had he known, he wouldn't have even bothered. That brat doesn't even know who gave birth to it. And you think it knew who killed it? Perhaps it was because too many disheartening things were bothering his mind recently. Even his speech was a little vulgar. Your general calls this bloody luck just this? Then how can people who suffer even worse luck even bear to live on anymore? Hua Chong said. Feng Shen shook his head and murmured, why is it like this? How did it become like this? Why don't you take care of your injuries first, Lian said. He tried. Did you bring any bombs? He glared at him darkly and said, I'm fine, don't mind me. He didn't bother managing his wounds. With his hand covering his injuries, he stood up, stumbling away. Lian and Fu Yao called after him a few times, asking if he was going back to the heavens or going to give chase, but he didn't answer at all, and soon his silhouette disappeared. Fu Yao struggled again, cried angrily, Your Highness, if you, old senior, won't give chase, will you at least let me? Lian snapped out of it, and after contemplating the cons and pros, he said, all right. And he actually did let go. Fu Yao didn't seem to think he would actually comply and worked out of the kinks of his wrist, humping, Why are you so willing to let me go now? He rubbed his forehead. The upper court is probably more of a mess than I imagined. I think now that rather than encouraging your general return, he should act freely outside instead. After a pause, he added, What are you going to do now? I don't think the fetus spirit was slandering only for the sake of escape. There might be someone in the background manipulating it. He dusted off his sleeves and said, well, who cares what's going on? It's going towards Mount Tonglu, so I'll think after capturing it. Then he left in a hurry. The inn where various groups of people had gathered was suddenly quiet and deserted. Lian turned around and went to check over that collapsed little cottage. He flipped and pulled aside the beams and straw to look around and made sure those monks and cultivators really were only knocked out and would probably come around soon. Reassured, he left as well. Oh my God, these chapters! Oh! And we're not even done! After walking for a while and leaving the barren hills behind, they finally found a real inn, and the two stopped to rest. Lian felt like the past few days were a complete mess. He sat at the windowsill, still lost in thought. Rui curled around his arm, rubbed up against him gently as if it was purring, and Lian scratched it absent-mindedly like it's a cat. Suddenly, Hua Chong came into the window, bathing under the same moonlight, and spoke up. It has nothing to do with you. Lian was shaken out of his reverie, but soon understood what he meant, and he shook his head. I don't know if it really does have anything to do with me. Feng Shen must have befriended Lady Zhanlan after Shanla fell, and before he ascended himself. Calculating the time, that was during the years of my first banishment. But that doesn't mean you're at fault for how they've turned out, Hua Chong said. After some thought, Lian said, San Long, I've never talked about my banishment, have I? No, Hua Chong said. I've never told anyone. I hope you won't mind if I drag you to listen to me to babble, Lian said. Hua Chong lightly pushed himself up against the windowsill and sat too. I won't, go ahead. Lian spoke as he chased his memories. Back then, the only vassal I had left was Feng Shen, and life was difficult. I had started out as a martial god, but by then, a lot of the possessions I had as a crown prince had all been pawned. Including Hong Jing, right? That's right. JUN WU can't know this. Do keep that a secret for me. And those dozens of golden belts, they were all pawned too. So Feng Shen took one of your golden belts and gifted it to Long Chong. Oh my God. He shook his head. I don't think that's the case. Feng Shen wouldn't have taken my thing so frivolously. It was me who told him to sell it and to keep the money for himself. Truthfully, this plainly was giving Feng Shen a sum of money for no reason. At the time, Feng Shen had declined it repeatedly, but in the end, because Lian was relentless, Feng Shen had said, I'll keep it for you for now. It's shameful to say, I made him sell it for money, and to keep it for himself, it wasn't just out of guilt, but out of fear as well. With all his devotees gone, only Feng Shen still treated him like the flower-crowned martial god, and His Highness the Crown Prince. Only then was Lian alerted to the fact that, even though the two had grown up together, Feng Xin being his trusted servant and bodyguard, not once had Feng Xin received any sort of exceptional rewards. Suddenly, Lian knew fear. Fear that Feng Xin would also think that this life was too hard and would stop following him. Thus, the meaning of that golden belt wasn't that of a reward, it was purely just a gift or compensation of labor, and there was also the intent of groveling and bribery. In the illusion created by that fear spirit, Lian had seen a protection charm. It was probably something Feng Xin had gifted to Xianlan. After Xianlan fell, all of the Lian's temples and shrines were burned down. Not a single soul believed in the crown prince of Xianlan anymore, and his protection charms were all seen as trash. However, Feng Xin was still determined and tireless in handing them out, telling Lian, "Look, you still have devotees." But Lian knew deep down that all of those protection charms were most likely thrown away. Lian spoke slowly. "Through so many years, I never knew if Feng Xin liked anyone. I never asked, and I never took notice. After all, he was the darling of the heavens since birth, high and mighty. Feng Xin so naturally spun around him like he was the world, so how could he possibly have his own life, his own heart?" It might not sound so nice to gift a girl something someone else gave you, but at the time, that golden belt was probably the best gift Feng Xin was able to give. After all, we were so frequently missing meals. Feng Xin wasn't someone who'd spend wastefully, so it's easy to imagine just how much he liked Lady Xianlan. If he liked her so much, why did they split? Whether or not that fetus spirit was Feng Xin's son. If it was that period of poverty that made Feng Xin lose the girl he loved, Lian wouldn't be able to forgive himself no matter what. However, Huang Chong said, if he liked her, but in the end they separated, then it only shows that what they had was only like. Lian smiled wistfully. "Long, things aren't always that absolute. Sometimes it's not up to you to decide if the road is easy to walk." Hua Chong said softly, "I might not be able to decide whether the road is easy or not, but whether I walk, it is entirely up to me." Lian, hearing this, blinked and felt a knot in his heart was untied. He stared at Hua Chong wordlessly, and Hua Chong tilted his head. "Gege, am I wrong?" Watching his twinkling black eyes, Lian suddenly grabbed a hold of him and placed him on his lap. "Long, you're very right." Hua Chong seemed to be stunned by his actions and allowed himself to be lifted high into the air, and Lian laughed. "To say something so shameless! What Long just said and the way you said it, it really quite resembles me from when I was younger." Hua Chong seemed to have gotten used to being hugged and tossed about around him like this and raised his brows. "Wow, what a dream!" The two of them played around in the room for quite a while. After, Lian threw Hua Chong onto the bed and then climbed up on himself, facing the ceiling. He was about to speak when suddenly Hua Chong sat up. His pupils shrank and his eyes turned sharp as he looked around the room. Lian immediately sensed something was wrong and instantly sat up too. The moment he saw, cold sweat covered his body. Silent and soundless, there was another figure in the room. They were sitting by the table, there since who knows when, a pot of tea already brewed, the scent of tea fragrant, and yet no one had noticed. Lian couldn't help but feel his chill go down his spine. He pointed Feng Xin forward. "Who is it?" And the man replied gently, "Don't be afraid. Tea, Xianlan." The figure and voice both belonged to a youth exceedingly familiar. Lian sighed a breath of relief, and his heart still thumping. He brushed back strands of his hair that came loose from playing around earlier behind his ears. "My lord!" However, before his breath was fully exhaled, he yanked and pulled back the blanket and buried both Hua Chong and his own body under. "Why has my lord descended?" "Oh my God! What the fudge?" The hand under the blanket held Hua Chong down tight, gesturing for him not to worry. JUN WU leisurely poured 3 cups of tea before rising to his feet. "You didn't come back, so naturally I had to come down personally to see." His hands were clenched as he spoke. He walked towards him, and slowly from the shadows he pulled something out. Lian's eyes followed down the white robes, and he saw JUN WU had in his hand a sword. Startled, he instantly jumped to his feet. "Oh, my lord, I can't explain." Yet unexpectedly, Hua Chong pulled off the blanket and sat up cross-legged, his arms resting casually on his knees. He smiled. "I don't think that's necessary." "Oh my God! What is happening? Oh no! Oh! Okay. Oh man. Okay. author's note, Mu Qing and Shi Lian trained in the same cultivation path, and they're both cultivators. However, Feng Shen never registered at the Royal Holy Pavilion, so he's not a cultivator. He's just a simple grassroots martial god, so he doesn't need to follow the same purity mandates as Shi Lian and Mu Qing. Oh, so he could get it on and it's fine. Okay. Whoa! Oh! Jun Wu just showing up out of nowhere! Oh my god! What? I choose the path I walk too. Chapter 142. Shi Lian used his own body to block between the two of them. I think we should all sit down and talk. Look at this child, my lord. Doesn't he look like your son, right? He laughed awkwardly for a bit. How did my lord know what I was going to say? Jun Wu finally moved his eyes off of Hua Chong, lightly patted Shi Lian on the shoulder, and wordlessly turned around to sit back at the table. Shi Lian understood that this meant there wasn't going to be any confrontation for now, and unconsciously sighed a breath of relief. If Jun Wu intended to kill anyone, just how terrifying he was after unsheathing the sword was something Shi Lian had witnessed himself. Under no circumstances did Shi Lian ever want Hua Chong to face Jun Wu head on. However, Hua Chong's eyes never left Jun Wu, and he watched him warily. Jun Wu pushed the teacups forward. Although this isn't the first time I've met you, good sir, it certainly is the first time we are in such close proximity. Since it's a peaceful occasion, why not take tea for wine and smooth over the situation? Shi Lian cleared his throat lightly and tried to appear as casual as possible as he pulled on his outer robes. He asked as he pulled on his boots, "My lord, how are things in the upper court?" Jun Wu put down the teacup and turned his head away, gazing out the window to watch the moon. He sighed. "I do not wish to speak of it." "All right, then I won't ask," Shi Lian said. It seemed things were really bad. However, Jun Wu turned his head back and said with a straight face, "I kid. Even if I do not wish to speak of it, I must. Shanle, leave your little friend for now and follow me outside for a moment." It appeared there were things to be discussed that shouldn't be heard by bystanders. Shi Lian was about to comply when he heard Hua Chong speak leisurely behind him. "Your upper court is in complete pandemonium. It's not a secret. Even little country bumpkin ghosts know that the gathering of ghosts couldn't be stopped this time and are howling nonstop in excitement, so why speak outside?" He climbed off the bed too and languidly came to the table. He picked up the teacup and played with it for a bit, looking like drinking the tea was of no interest to him, and a moment later, the three all sat by the table. Hua Chong's appearance right now was young, but his expression and manners almost made one forget that fact. Jun Wu replied gently, "Nothing could deceive the eyes of this good sir." It was tea poured by Jun Wu after all, and due respect must be given, so Shi Lian drank it. He asked as he did so, "Isn't there some time now before the official opening and sealing of Mount Tonglu's gates, or is it confirmed now?" Although Feng Shen had mentioned this before, Shi Lian always kept in mind that he might be exaggerating and never fully took his words to heart. However, Jun Wu confirmed, "Indeed, it can't be stopped anymore." "It seems your original plan was like all those times before. Send all the martial gods to seal off every road leading to Mount Tonglu and stop the demons en route," Hua Chong commented. "But Mu Qing broke out of prison and escaped. With his whereabouts unknown, there's now suddenly a breach in the south." Shi Lian inquired, "Did Feng Shen return to the heavenly court? How is he? Did he say anything?" "He's returned, but not in good condition," Jun Wu replied. Nan Yang returned wounded and gave a hurried report of the truth, pleading for me to give orders to all the heavenly officials not to touch the female ghost Lan Chong and her son. He had wanted to descend again after reporting in, but the state of his injuries was not optimistic. His right arm can barely move. So I buckled him down in the heavenly court to recover. However, with that, the southern blockade is now full of holes. If this was any other matter, like if they needed someone to go kill a monster or steal spiritual pills or something, Shi Lian would instantly volunteer. But something like leading troops wasn't so easily done by charging ahead alone. One man could break through an army of millions, but he could not defend against an army of millions alone. Shi Lian had long understood that leading people and leading armies wasn't something he was good at. Rather than going forward bold-headedly, it was best if someone else more suited for the position was nominated, and thus he wasn't quick to volunteer himself. Instead, he asked, "Is there no other martial god that can take up the task?" Jun Wu replied, "The other martial gods have already had their own domains and missions to take care of, and have no liberty to take on more. There was Pei Su from the palace of Ming Guang that could have been borrowed, but he's long been since exiled. As for Qi Ying, he's the same as you, a madman who likes to charge alone in the world, doing as he wills. Besides, his whereabouts are currently unknown, and that child never answers any spiritual communication. The head heavenly official of the Palace of Lian is also lost on top of that. There's a temporary head, but the other civil gods, while they're certainly skilled in the arts, in terms of facilitating communication, making decisions, and coordination management, they're completely incapable these past few days. Listening to him, it sounded like in the past few days the upper court was about to fall apart. Lian couldn't bear to listen as sympathies grew. I remember my lord once said, even if the gathering of ghosts couldn't be stopped, there was another way to remedy the situation. What can be done? Remedy, Hua Chong said, more like suicide, probably. JUN WU gave him a look and sighed. I've also said, unless absolutely necessary, I didn't want to take that step. Could it be? That's right. Now the only way to remedy the situation is to send a martial god to infiltrate the gathering of ghosts at Mount Tonglu. Since the start of slaughter couldn't be stopped, then make sure at the end of the slaughter not a single one is left. Lian crossed his arms into his sleeves and knitted his brows. I'm not too familiar with Mount Tonglu, and I really don't know how the rules work, so how should this be done? Kill every last monster and demon that enter the mountain? But that was something inconceivable. To infiltrate Mount Tonglu, one's identity must be hidden, and not too many helpers can come. Otherwise, if the ghosts should discover there were heavenly officials mixed in, they would sure surround and destroy. Mount Tonglu was also an extremely evil place. A heavenly official's spiritual powers would be significantly restricted, much more so than when they were at the Blackwater Demon Lair. However, JUN WU said no, there's no need to exert that much effort. I'm familiar with Mount Tonglu. Gege, look outside, Hua Chong said. Following where he was pointing, Lian looked out the window, and beyond the window there was a large field planted with some flowers and grass, and there was a small flower pot in the corner. Hua Chong hopped onto the windowsill and pointed at the flower pot. At the heart of Mount Tonglu is a giant kiln. Just as the words left his lip, the little flower pot suddenly fell over and rolled to the center of the field before standing upright by itself. Soon after, with it, as the heart, the once flat ground suddenly rumbled and rolled in waves, rolling into mounds of various sizes all around. Like he's creating a map, Hua Chong continued. All around the kiln is a mountain range encircling it. The entire area is within Mount Tonglu's perimeter. It's as big as 7 city-states. Lian was amazed watching this. He leapt it lightly and hopped out the window. As he stood among the field full of little earth mounds, it gave him the illusion of being a giant looking down below. Hua Chong continued. The slaughter of ghosts begins from the outer edges of the mountain range and continues on towards the kiln at the heart. He gave a giant wave of his hand, and the tiny objects on the ground started agitating. Lian crouched down to watch closely and discovered many weeds and small leaves twisting like small people crossing the mountain range. He remarked, which is to say, the closer to the kiln in the center, the ghosts are stronger. That's right, because the weak weeds will have been annihilated at the edges. Another light wave of a hand and a breeze brushed by. The weeds were completely cleaned away by it. The empty little earth mound suddenly became desolate, looking rather sad. However, the little flower pot at the center suddenly emitted a red light, truly looking like a tiny fire-blazing kiln. Lian stared at it and noticed there was a tiny little red flower and a few unremarkable weeds that had jumped into the little flower pot, spinning around the sides of the pot like people dancing. The little red flower danced the wildest. Hua Chong crouched down next to him. Finally, only a handful of ghosts can enter the most exterior of the kiln, and then the kiln will close. The little people jumped around and fell in, swallowed by black mud. After that, within 49 days, a ghost must break out of this kiln. The little flower pot trembled violently and exploded abruptly. A blinding red light flashed, blasting a wave of dust. Accompanying this earth-shattering birth, the little red flower leapt out from within the mud and raised its little leaves as if it was shouting to the winds to announce its might to the world. Seeing this, Lian couldn't help but puff a laugh. However, perhaps because it was a little too overly excited, the little red flower slipped on the edge of the flower pot and was about to fall. Lian hurriedly reached out his hand and caught it lightly, holding it in his palms. The little red flower seemed to have gone dizzy from the fall and shook its head, raising its face to gaze at the one who caught it. Lian brushed off the bits of dust that splattered on him and asked, "So this little one is the new ghost king birthed from Mount Tonglu?" "Correct. The slaughter of ghosts at the beginning was a strengthening process and cannot be bypassed. If the ghost who entered the kiln isn't strong enough and can't break free of it, then it will be suffocated inside, burned to ashes, and will become fertilizer for another." He rose to his feet and called to JUN WU, who was still inside, sitting. Your idea is to cut down the mighty and leave the weeds. So there's only so many that with the potential to become Ghost King. Once they're annihilated, the weak ones who remain can't break out of the kiln even if they enter it. If they can't break out, then they still wouldn't be recognized as Ghost Kings. Lian nodded. Well, it sounds doable, but does it work? Has this been attempted before? JUN WU approached the window and said, no, it's never been attempted before. In the past, the demons had always been stopped before they were able to gather. Huachong crossed his arms. I'm afraid it's not doable. To fight under these circumstances and these conditions is no different than suicide. I suggest the one who came up with such a brilliant idea go themselves. I've that very intention, JUN WU replied easily. My lord! Shanla, I've descended for this very reason. I will be headed to Mount Tonglu. I need you to return to the heavenly court and take care of my duties for the time being. Well, that won't do. Have me take your place temporarily, my lord. Please don't joke. No one will listen to me. Then this will be a very good chance for them to start. Lian rubbed his forehead. Oh, my lord, pardon me, but I really can't agree with you this time. This is too absurd. To use a vulgar example from the mortar realm, an emperor can enter the battlefield, but have you ever heard of an emperor going to infiltrate an assassin? That the heavenly court can float so high in the heavens is because it's all held up by you. None of the other heavenly officials can do this. It's all my lord's efforts. If you're there, the sky won't fall. If you're not there, the sky really will fall. JUN WU, however, answered with his hands clenched at his sides. Shanla, there's nothing and no one in this world who will fall only because the heavens collapsed. Once you're used to it, you'll find that even with whoever's lost, life will go on. There will always be new to replace the old. To have a new Ghost King be born, it's nothing if it's another Crimson Rain-sought flower or ship sinking black water, but if it's another white-faced calamity, then the world will fall to chaos. He looked Lian in the eyes. You've seen with your own eyes just how difficult it was to kill a supreme like him. If it's not me who goes, then there is no other way. Lian knew this wasn't just JUN WU being humble. To be in one's weakest state and trapped with millions of ghosts, and to be able to accurately pick out each and every one of the strongest to kill or subdue, he couldn't say for sure he could even do it himself. It was only JUN WU that had the greatest chance of success, but this leave might take up to 10 years. What about the outside world? What about the upper court? Just then, Huachong spoke up. Who says there's no other way? Oh my God, no! Oh my God, no! Oh! Oh! I am sweating. Oh my God, these chapters, oh my God. MXTX, no! No, no, no! Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm gonna need a minute, y'all. What is happening in this volume? Oh my God, we're no longer dealing with the tease and the cliffhanger that was volume 4. We're dealing with the chaos and the cliffhanger that is volume 5. This beautiful little simple cover is so trickery, such treachery that MXTX is like, oh, look at this cute little cover with San Long and Lian on it. Lies. I was on the edge of my seat the entire chapter set. That is the most invested I have been reading a chapter set in a long time. Like last week was chaos and I couldn't read fast enough. This week I wanted to just like soak everything in and be like, what is happening? It gets better and better. It gets better and better. Oh my God. Oh. I'm just like sweating and JUN WU, the confrontation with JUN WU and Lian and Huachong, I'll be honest, until JUN WU said that Bai Wusheng is dead, I still am on the fence. I'm like, I don't know. Because for a hot second, whenever there was just a mysterious figure just there in the room with Lian and Huachong, and I was like, oh my God, he just shows up without announcing. It's just like pouring tea, like, hey guys, what's up? Like, for a second, I thought it was Bai Wusheng. For a second, I thought it was Bai Wusheng just sitting there being like, pouring tea, like, oh, hey guys, what's up? What's up? Like, you know, like that. But then it's JUN WU, equally creepy in this moment, just like sitting there, oh, could you guys like some tea? And with Hua Chong, oh, we have so much to talk about in this chapter set. I'm so glad that y'all haven't spoiled me because I didn't see this coming at all. I thought, well, here's the thing. It is pretty much confirmed that it's Mu Qing in Fu Yao's body. The question is why, which we're gonna put some stuff on whiteboard Kun here. But it's pretty much confirmed that the little dialogue between Hua Chong and Mu Qing, when Mu Qing's like, oh, you're a child, and Hua Chong's like, oh, you're a junior official. Like, again, it's the Heshan thing. Again, it's like, you know, just meeting halfway and they're both like, I see you, right? But they don't want to get Lian involved. The question is, why doesn't Hua Chong just out Mu Qing? Because he seems like he could. But I feel like we're going to write down and go through this chapter set. I feel like Hua Chong, for once, Hua Chong knew everything that had to do with Heshan. And him and Heshan had a supreme ghost bro pact where they're like, I'm not going to mess in your business, you're not going to mess in mine. But they knew each other's businesses, right? They're like, we both took a supreme, we came out the Tonglu fraternity with a blood oath, right? So we're totally chill with each other. In this scenario, I feel like Hua Chong has assumptions about Mu Qing, and Hua Chong wants to confirm them. But because Hua Chong does not know the full details, he's not just going to out Mu Qing because he's like, this could be dangerous. The situation is dangerous enough, and Lian could be put into a compromising situation. And Hua Chong is not going to do that. He is not going to put Lian in a situation that he feels Lian can't handle. And so, but oh my God, the ultimatum by JUN WU, the fudge you say? Things are pretty dire if it's come to that point, right? But what the fudge? We've got so much to talk about. And then Feng Xin! Oh, like so much to talk about in this chapter set. And Qirong and Goosey, they're not gone for long. They'll be back. They'll be back because MXTX just can't resist inserting Qirong into the story once more. But you all think I'm gonna wait? I can't. After that cliffhanger, there's no way I can wait. I may have to wait a day or two, but there's no way I can wait. There's just not. No. So, okay, we need to go through and put up here unanswered questions because there's a lot of them that come up in this chapter set. Unanswered questions is a pretty big thing in this chapter set that needs to get addressed. And we also need to talk about details that we do know. So we need to talk about the details we know as well as the things that we don't. We need to just address those right off the bat. I'm gonna get some markers, maybe we can see better. And just go through because where do we even start? I guess we just need to go through the chapters. These were very long chapters and like filling. Like I felt like I ate a meal with these chapters. Like these were very fulfilling chapters. I got my bang for my buck with these chapters, and I'm here for it, y'all. So we did not find out for sure that it's Mu Qing. We have many things to lead us to believe that it's Mu Qing, but it has not been confirmed. So again, please no spoilers, but I'm sure we'll find things out as we go. I feel like MXTX is leading us to believe that it is Mu Qing in Fu Yao's body, or pretending to be Fu Yao. I don't think he's possessing Fu Yao. I feel like Mu Qing is pretending to be Fu Yao. Why? We don't know. But I don't want anybody in the comments to be like, you're right, because please don't do that. Just let me figure it out as we go, and I want to get confirmation from the story, not from a comment, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, so Lian tries to lie at first, right? Which Lian is actually not terrible at lying. He's not terrible at telling a white lie. He was really trying to get a hold of someone and tried to ask Fu Yao, be like, hey, can you help me get a hold of somebody? And Fu Yao's like, oh, well, you take care of your things yourself. I don't want to help you, no. And that's when, one thing that is interesting is that Hua Chong does care about Guzi. Like, Hua Chong does make note that Guzi has not ate in 2 days and is feverish. which I'm a little bit worried about Goozy because Goozy's ran off with Chi-Rong. I'm a little bit worried because I don't get the warm, fuzzy feelings from Chi-Rong as being a caretaker, so I'm a little bit concerned about him. And Shi Lian is like, how on earth do you take care of kids? And like, he's like, you know, reprimanding Chi-Rong for not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And Chi-Rong's like, it's not like I'm his dad. He's like, it's like, you should just give me merits for not eating him. And Shi Lian's like, you probably haven't ate him because he's too hot for you to eat. You know, I like the relationship, the cousinly back and forth that they have. And Lan Chong speaks up saying, is the child sick? How about I take a look? And so what is interesting here is, and Lan Chong, Jian Lan, what a blast from the past. Did not even sink in, did not even realize it was her. And then suddenly it was like, oh my God, this is all like as Chi-Rong says, it's a small world after all in Heaven Official's Blessing. Everybody surrounding Shi Lian, it's like all of his ghosts have come back to haunt him, right? So we talk about Jian Lan, who is Lan Chong. She had changed her name, but she is very motherly. She is very motherly and is not bad. I think that that's what's so interesting in here is that she is this really tragic character as it comes out. And it's what's so interesting is when we first met her back in volume 3, she was kind of this activist that was against Yongin. So she goes on this journey, right? Her character's gone on this journey, right? Where she was supposed to be intended for Shi Lian. And well, Shi Lian has no interest in women whatsoever. I like that Chi-Rong's like, oh, he was too busy cultivating and whatnot. I'm like, no, Shi Lian has no sexual interest in women whatsoever. Like, not at all. Right? That she was supposed to be intended for him. Didn't happen. Then we see that she was actually against the Yongins in the uprising with all of that, right? And she was with someone political at the time, right? She was with someone like in the revolt, and like she was trying to keep the immigrants out of Shanla, and she was leading like a revolt against them, right? And she had all this support, right? Somewhere along the way, she had relations with Feng Shin. Somewhere along the way, they did the thing, right? Supposedly, because he believes that the fetus spirit is his son. He's in full belief that this fetus spirit is his kid. That's messed up. Because that'll do a trip. You come down to come see what's wrong with your best friend, the Crown Prince, and in the same token, you find out that your ex-flame is not only still around, but is a ghost, and that your possible unborn child is a giant monster now. Not giant monster, but a monster now. What a day, right? But supposedly they had relations, and and then she has become a ghost with the fetus spirit, who has a name, and I'm the worst at saying it. It's Shosho, right? So. It's pronounced. See, this to me looks like shoe. Looks like shoe. That's what this looks like. It looks like the French word shoe, like shoe pastry. But so I think it's shoo, which just sounds like choo-choo. But it's supposed to be like susu. You all will tell me in the comments down below how you say the fetus spirit's name. I'm just going to call it the fetus spirit for now until I get confirmation how you say its name. But yeah, so apparently she says it's not his. But it's been rumored that after Shanla fell, it's possible that she could have became a slave. She could have became a slave, could have became a prostitute, and then became a ghost. Now, is the fetus spirit Feng Shin's child? We don't know. I thought it was Mu Qing's, and here we are. No, it's not. It could possibly be Feng Shin's kid. No, which is hilarious in the darkest of ways because Feng Shin swears off women. He doesn't want to be around women, but he had relations with Jian Lan. So that leads a lot of questions. So the big question is the fetus spirit, is it Feng Shin's kid? Right? And is losing Jianlan the reason he swears off other women? I mean, honestly, it would be kind of sweet if Feng Xin like ends up forming a relationship back with Jianlan. I would actually really encourage that because he seems like he cares about her still. He cares about her. He cared about the fetus spirit, even if it wasn't his kid. He wasn't the stepdad. He was the dad that stepped up. These are going to be coming out around Father's Day on YouTube and Patreon, and I'm like, oh dear God, this is what a Father's Day gift. There's dads everywhere. You've got Qirong and Guzi, a Feng Xin and the fetus spirit. You've got Lian being Hua Chong's daddy. And then you have Daddy JUN WU showing up. Dads everywhere. Dilfs everywhere. We're just all the things. But yeah, I really would think it would be interesting if Feng Xin tried to rekindle a relationship with Jianlan when all of this is said and done, because I think that he could do it, right? If she was like his lost love and he didn't want to love any women after that, right? Because he was afraid that they would end up like her, even though he didn't know that she'd become a ghost, right? He didn't want to think, maybe, because he thought she had married off and had a family. So he loved her, had a fling with her, and then lost her. So maybe he doesn't want to be around other women because he's afraid of loving and losing, because he felt really bad after losing Jianlan. And she's ashamed because here he is looking like a martial god, looking beautiful and handsome. And she feels like she's this ugly hag ghost. And she's like, here you are looking amazing, and I've fallen so far that she feels embarrassed being around him. And then she has this fetus spirit that I don't believe that the fetus spirit is Feng Xin's. I don't. I believe that it came about because of circumstances that happened to her after Shanla fell. Do I believe that she's embarrassed about it because she doesn't want him involved? Because she's like, this isn't your kid, but I wish it could have been your kid, but we can't have what we can't have because of X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I think that she's embarrassed and ashamed because maybe she wanted something with Feng Xin, it didn't work out. And now she's like, the last person I wanted to see me like this is him. And now he's seeing me like this and seeing this fetus spirit that he may think is his kid when it's not, right? Because she knows he's very noble like that Feng Xin is. But honestly, at the end of this all, if this all turns out okay by the end, which doesn't look like it's happening right now, but if it all turns out in the end, I wouldn't be opposed to Feng Xin going after Jianlan. I mean, Lian ain't gonna tell him no. He's gonna be like, Feng Xin, as someone who's banging a residential supreme ghost king, hopefully by the end of this, you go get yourself a Jianlan. You go get yourself that ghost girl. I'm with a ghost guy. It's working out great. Ling wins with the Brocade Immortal. Working out great. All these heavenly officials just shacking up with these ghosts. That's going to be the moral at the end of the story, is that love is love. You too should be able to shack up with someone, whether they're a ghost or a mortal or a heavenly official. That's the end of the story. But yeah, so we don't know but it's so fascinating to see Feng Xin, who has had has avoided women the entire story, is repulsed by them, but he's instantly attracted to Jianlan and is magnetized to her, and he's like, oh my God, you're still alive. Well, she's not alive, she's a ghost. He's like, you're still here. So it's so fascinating that he's attracted to her, and she's just like, I don't want you to look at me like this. And so I want him to make amends with her by the end of this story. And we're just now getting introduced to it in volume 5. We still got 3 volumes to go. So, crazy talk, right? Crazy talk. But I love how instantly parental she is. And that's when Fu Yao is like, we need to go. Which is kind of cold of Mu Qing / Fu Yao. Because, Guzi's sitting here feverish and she's trying to use her ghost body to cool him down. And Fu Yao's like, let's go. Let's get back to the heavenly realm. Let's leave. But is he going to take her back to the heavenly realm? That's the thing. What is he planning? What was the plan with Jianlan? So with Fu Yao / Mu Qing, what was the plan with Jianlan and the fetus spirit? What was the plan? Because he tells Lian, he's like, I'm not going back to the heavenly realm. So I'm like, then what were you going to do with her? What was the plan if you weren't taking it back to the heavenly realm because you didn't want to be found out? What's going on? And so Like, I love the visual of Lian using Ruyi to both bind Qirong in one hand and bind Fu Yao in the other hand. It's like the meme where the person has the leashes and the kids like on different leashes being stretched around. That's what Lian looks like. And Fu Yao's like, well, then just let me go. And Lian's like, well, why don't we work together? Why don't we help get Mu Qing to come back with us? Now, the thing of it is, I don't think that Lian knows that Fu Yao is Mu Qing. I don't think Lian knows. Hua Chong knows. Hua Chong can see right through it and is like, I see right through you, dude. I know exactly who you are. If you're going to out me, I'm going to out you. So I don't think Lian realizes. Now, why Hua Chong has not told Lian is because I think things are so chaotic, Hua Chong doesn't want to add another log to the fire. He's like, I'm not going to make this situation worse. But he's going to tell Mu Qing, I know it's you. Don't try to pull any shenanigans or I'm going to out you. Like, Hua Chong is kind of like the mafia boss that he's in the sidelines being like, you just stay in line and we'll be fine. And that's like, this is where he's at with it, right? So, but Fu Yao absolutely does not want to go back. And he says, if the one stuck in a situation where it was you, would you go back? What would you say if others urged you to return? Go back and be wronged and wait for conviction. Go back and wait for death. And Lian's like, whoa, I'm being serious. It's like, I'm not being sarcastic. He's like, your general and I are different. His situation isn't hopeless beyond the point of no return. He was just running away. It's not like he's done anything wrong, right? And Fu Yao is like, how many heavenly officials have fallen after you've investigated? And Lian's like, well, that's different. That's not the same. He's like, that's only been everyone I've come in contact with in the story. But Mu Qing will be different, right? I love that he tries to like be like, oh, well, no, it's fine. And I like that Fu Yao is like, it's like not like no one knows the personal grudges between you two. So apparently there's these personal grudges. So Mu Qing, if we're assuming this is who Fu Yao is, Mu Qing believes that there are personal grudges. There are personal grudges with him and Lian, right? Again, we don't know the full story. We get a little bit about Feng Xin and his time together, which was fascinating. As the moment that Lian's like, I want to talk about my past, I'm like, tell me more. I was like the meme of the guy at the gate being like, let me in. I want to hear more about Lian's past. And we get that, and then Fu Yao, JUN WU shows up. I'm like losing my mind. But Hua Chong, the thing that gets me is that Mu Qing / Fu Yao believes that Lian is being fake. He believes that Lian would not actually help him. And that's fascinating to me. So I'm going to put Fu Yao / Mu Qing, because I do think it's Mu Qing. He thinks that Lian would not actually help him. He believes that Lian's being fake, that he's just saying that he's going to help him when that's not really the case. And Hua Chong, it's the Michael Jordan meme of, and I took that personally, Hua Chong gets mad about that. He's like, forget this guy. He's like, this guy doesn't know how to recognize goodness when he sees it. Some people are simply born ungrateful, and they gouge the heart of a man of integrity with their own wretched closed-mindedness. He doesn't trust you, and I don't have the time to care for him anyway. Let him struggle and figure things out for himself. Because Hua Chong's just like, look, he's like, this guy doesn't realize that you're trying to help him, so screw him. If he's not going to trust you and be willing to take up your kindness, let him figure it out for himself. Let him just figure it out. Hua Chong's like, he's not worth our time. And I love, the moment that submits to me is when Fu Yao goes, really, kid? You're saying all these big, insightful things? Kid? And I love that Hua Chong immediately goes, junior official? And Fu Yao's like, touche. I love that was the moment that it was like, okay, yeah, that's the moment where we're going, it's right back to a Heshan thing where Hua Chong's like, I can see right through you. Don't kid me. I know it's not you. Like, so the question is why? Why is he posing as Fu Yao? To what purpose? Why does he want to take Zhan Lan? Where is he taking her to if he's not taking her back to the Heavenly Realm? What's going on? MXTX decides to not give us any of those answers and instead have Feng Xin show up. So what's funny is that Lian like totally insults Mu Ching in this moment. He's like, well, Mu Ching, even though he's narrow-minded, even though he's petty and he's skeptical and sensitive, has a bad personality, constantly guesses, has no friends, can't remember small and important details. God, it's just like Lian rakes him through the coals, and Fu Yao's like, really, this is, well, like he would never spit on, I love the idea he would never spit in the cup of someone he doesn't like. Fu Yao says he would not spit either. Lian's like, he may insult someone and he may throw someone under the bus if he doesn't like them, but he wouldn't intentionally harm someone. And Fu Yao's like, oh, he wouldn't do that either. And Lian's just like, well, laxatives then. He's like, why are you describing him? Are you supporting him or not? And it's like, well, you just said that he was being fake. And so I love this part here because Lian he's not being fake at all. Lian's like, hey, I would help you. Even if you are a trash king, I'd still help you. Qirong's the only one we got issues with, and he's family, so it's fine. It's different. But it's like Mu Ching, what's so funny here is if it is Mu Ching and not Fu Yao, after all this time, he still doesn't quite understand Lian, which is so fascinating to me, right? He still doesn't quite understand his sarcasm and how he is. And I find that so fascinating. But again, it's not been outed that it is officially Mu Ching. So we have to go. So until we know, innocent until proven guilty, until the story comes out and says that it's Mu Ching, I'm going to still call him Fu Yao. But it's like, come on, right? But the fact that he can remember small and important details, I feel like that's going to come back as well. But then that's when Qirong notices Lan Chong as Jian Lan. What's so amazing about this is that Qirong, for all of his trash kingness, has an amazing memory. Qirong remembers things. It's so fascinating because Qirong and Lian are polar opposites. Lian forgets things quite easily. Like, he didn't even remember Jian Lan at all. He was like, oh, her? Oh, which shows you just how little interest in women he had back then. Lian's like, oh, I totally forgot about her. And Qirong is like sharp. He remembers things quickly. He's like, that's her. 800 years ago, I still remember her. And which ties back to the fetus spirit being from the time of Shanla. We found that out in volume 4, that the fetus spirit was from when Shanla fell. So that all ties back. Everything's coming back around. And she had one of the talismans from Lian's palace originally, which was given to her by Feng Xin. It's all tying back around. MXTX, you mastermind. All the details, they're all tying back. The golden belt, everything, it's all coming full circle. But, man, the entire beatdown with Jian Lan versus Qirong is absolutely amazing. Like, that was so much fun to read because she was just letting him have it. She was just screaming right back like, you piece of trash. You're not even worthy being on the same level as the Black Water, the Crimson Rain, or the White Calamity. It's like, oh my God, right? Right. So then Lian recognizes her without all the makeup on, without looking all disheveled. He realizes who it was. But she no longer wants to be called Jian Lan. She doesn't want to be recognized by that name anymore. And what's so sad is that she knows how far she's fallen, and she doesn't want to insult her family by going by her family name. Instead, she wants to go by the name that she's given herself, right? And it makes sense now why Hua Chong took her in, because she's tied to Lian. That's why he took her in. Makes sense. And it could be that Hua Chong felt sorry for her. It could be. He doesn't have the best track record of that. But the fact that she's tied to Shanla and to Lian's past, of course he would take her in. Of course, right? The fact, though, that she came up to Lian way back in volume 2 and asked him to get up all up on her, and he was like, oh no, I can't get it up. What a callback, right? The fact that they had that much history back then. Now I'm going to question every single ghost that's come through the story, because MXTX might just be bringing it all back around, right? And Lian was just amazed that this daughter from a noble family was now a prostitute in the ghost realm. She was once his devotee and his citizen, so how could he not sigh? Again, what's sad is that Lian feels like he's let her down. he's like, oh my God. He's like, another one of my citizens that I was supposed to protect. And I let her down, and now she's a ghost that's prostituting in the ghost realm. And she's lost her kid. Like, how could I have done this? And what I love is that Hua Chong, without saying a word, Hua Chong, without doing a thing, he comes up to Shi Lian and like grabs his hand. He doesn't look at him, he just holds his hand like he instantly knows what Shi Lian's going through. And he's like, hey, I'm right here. Like you're not alone. Don't be sad. It's okay. But Qirong doesn't have any sympathy. He instead chides her about her past and how far she's fallen. And then, you know what? Qirong is very classless, tasteless, and horrible, but he is asking the questions that we, the audience, are wanting to ask. We want somebody to ask, who's the fetus spirit's baby daddy? Who is it? But then, of course, Qirong's like, well, it couldn't be Cousin Crown Prince. He can't even get it up. That's why he pretends to be chaste with no mind for women. What a faker. I'm like, if Qirong figures out that Shi Lian and Hua Chong are a thing. But that's when she just like goes all off on him because she does not want anybody talking about the father of her kid. Because here's the thing. She may have had these dreams of having a kid with Feng Shen, but the reality is more than likely, the sad reality is that she could have been sexually assaulted and the fetus spirit could have been born out of that assault, which is awful. And then to know that not only was that the case, but that it was forcibly removed from her. If she had come to terms with that child and was like going to accept that child, and then it was forcibly removed from her and became this monster, like I can't help but feel awful for her because like no one asks for that. She likely didn't ask for that. So you can't help but feel sad for her, but she strikes Qirong right where it hurts. She's like, you're not even worthy of being equal with the other three supremes. Here's the thing that's so creepy about it, is that Bai Wusheng at this point, here's the thing that's creepy. JUN WU says, you know how hard it was to kill Bai Wusheng. And we're like, yes. The ghosts still treat him like he's around, which is why I'm always like, are we sure he's dead? Because she says, how could you be on equals with the other three supremes? Have there only been three supremes in the history of the entire world? Have there only been three supremes? Has it just been Bai Wusheng, the Blackwater, and Hua Chong? The Blackwater and Hua Chong seem like they weren't created too far apart from each other. So, has this ever been a thing? Like, what's going on? Because you would think, my thing is, if there have been other supreme ghosts in the past that have been stopped by heavenly officials or people as strong as JUN WU, then you wouldn't keep using them in the present tense, right? But she says with the other three supremes, so I'm like, the way she says it makes it sound like Bai Wusheng is still there. But JUN WU makes it sound like Bai Wusheng is not still there. So which is it, MXTX? I'm still waiting. They give us so much damn hints with Bai Wusheng in this that it's so frustrating. I'm like, damn it, no! But yeah. And of course he calls her a foul and ugly slut. And then, of course, Shi Lian stops him because he's like, this is just too much. And she says, trash. You're just trash. And I love that she's about to like hurl a boulder at him. That was great. And that's when Feng Shen shows up. And Fu Yao is like, I thought you said you didn't snitch. I thought you were only chatting. Which was true. And Hua Chong is like, he's just coming uninvited. I love that Hua Chong is just like, well, now matters are going to get worse, aren't they? That's literally what happens, right? And then in walks in Feng Shen. He's like, you didn't answer my phone calls, so I got worried. He's like, knowing you were in trouble. What's happening? And the picture that Feng Shen shows up to is just, you can imagine it in the anime, in the Donghua. You can just imagine Feng Shen shows up. There's Shi Lian. On one side is Fu Yao wrapped up, who shouldn't be there. And then on the other side is Qirong, the Green Lantern, who Feng Shen knows is there. And then there's also a child form of Hua Chong, the Crimson Rain Sunflower, and this ghost that's maybe his ex-wife and a possible baby ghost. I feel like it's the meme from Community where Daniel Glover walks in and there's just fire and everything happening and he's like, Feng Shen's like, what the fudge? Like, I feel like that's what's happening, right? But of all things to ask about, he asks what's up with this child. And Lian's like, oh, cute, right? It's my son. And Lian's like, oh, I haven't had a son, but if I do have a son, he must be just as cute, right? And Hua Chong's like, right. That made me think that, like, if Lian and Hua Chong ever had, like, a little baby of their own, it would have to look like Hua Chong. It would have to, right? Adorable. But then, before anything else can happen, and I was waiting for Function to comment about Fu Yao, because in the last set of chapters, he said that Mu Qing's palace was sealed off. So Fu Yao should technically not be there. And so I was waiting for Function to comment on it, but then the whole thing with Zhan Lan happens, and it just throws everything into chaos. And so, how do they say? They say it sounds like suo suo. Suo suo. So suo suo is the name of the baby, Suo Suo. But it's just sitting there eating the arrow that Function throws at it. And it, like, the way they describe it, it no longer is like a little ghastly coming around, it like actually has a form, is that it's a little deformed monster. The skin is totally white, it has big shining eyes, a few yellowing strands of hair, razor sharp fangs, and a red snake-like tongue. Like, once it becomes this ghost, it's like a monster. So we get two images with it. Technically 3 images with this chapter set, but I'm going to save the other image for the next chapter set. I'm not waiting. I'm going to read the next chapter set as soon as I can, because I can't end on this cliffhanger. How dare you, MXTX? But we get the first image, which is of the fetus spirit grappling a hold of Feng Shen, with Zhan Lan and him there. And it's actually like, this image is so heartbreaking, because he just looks at her in disbelief like, oh my God, it's you. And then, yeah, the little fetus spirit. Oh my God. And her calling him an MFer. I was like, oh my God. She shoved him cussing. And then she's like, spare me some dignity. And Qirong's just having the time of his life, because Qirong's like, this is too good. Qirong's like, this is better than an episode of Maury. We just had this guy show up. He's maybe the baby daddy to this ghostly brat and her, and it's just this big, like, Qirong would love reality TV. He'd just sit there with his phoenix chicken legs eating them, right? Oh my God. But she's like, don't fight him, run away. And then that's when he recognizes her. Because at first, the thing that's insane is that he didn't recognize her back in the heavenly realm because she had all the makeup on. She had all the makeup and she was hysterical. And the only person she did not accuse of being the child's father was Feng Shen. The only one she didn't accuse. So, is he but then again, he may have been the one person that she wishes was the dad of her child. And so she doesn't want to convict him because she doesn't want him to get in trouble. Yeah. And he hadn't recognized her until just now. And he's like, how did you become this way? And which is, Feng Shen is being sincere in this moment, being like, what happened to you? How did you become this ghost? And she's like, don't you understand? She's like, I didn't ask to be like this. And she kind of has like a meltdown, being like, mad, like, can you not pretend to not recognize me? Can you just pretend you don't know me anymore? So she, like, her heart's broken because not only did he not recognize her at the heavenly court, which probably broke her heart because it cemented how much she'd changed from when they knew each other before, but she didn't want to get him involved, and now he's getting involved, and she's like, I just don't want you around me. I'm not the woman that you were in love with. And so Qirong's just, like, having a time with this whole reveal. And Lian is just insane, just like incredulous, like, who would have imagined Feng Shen, who would never speak to a woman if he could help it, was actively trying to talk to her. And then, he has this fetus spirit eating on his arm, gnawing on it like a piranha. And he's just like looking at it, being like, is this ours? And then that's when she's like, he's not. No. So the question is it or is it not? And I think for Feng Shen, that question doesn't matter. I think that regardless of if the fetus spirit is actually his child or not, he still feels bad for her and still feels some responsibility as someone that loved her to, like, try to help her and the kid. But then he gets injured by the fetus spirit. And so what can we do, right? So she just can't. He's like, what did you call him? Shoujo. And so apparently the name has some kind of meaning. The name has some kind of special meaning. So maybe they plan to have a child together. Maybe they were wanting to have a kid, and if they had a kid, that's what they were going to name him. We don't know enough about the situation. And it's so frustrating because MXTX has us like torn into 5,000 pieces at this point. Like we have Ling Wen's story with the Brocade Immortal over here that we've not finished yet. We have the Blackwater down here with the Windmaster with their story that we've not finished yet. We have Feng Xin with Zhan Lan and the Fetus Spirit now that we haven't finished yet. And we have Mu Qing over here posing as Fu Yao with a story that we haven't finished yet. And I'm just like, MXTX, I know I have to trust her. The threads are going to come together. But, dear God, the one thing about Modao Zushi is even when the threads were, I never felt like the threads were this far apart in Modao Zushi. Everything felt like it was a little ball rolling along and you kind of picked up a little bit of moss along the way. But here, it's a spider web and it's just insanity. And I'm like, you try to keep track of everything and it's like, oh my God, all this stuff is happening and it's all threaded, it's all connected. Oh my God. But yeah, so there's that. Like, what's a big man like you doing talking so much talk? If I said he's not, he's not. Who the hell's that eager to recognize their son? And then Feng Xin is like, well, if he is, she's like, we'll do what? Recognize him, raise him? And he's like, I don't know what to do. Because she's like, what if it was your son? What are you going to do? He's a ghost. You're going to take him to the heavenly court? You're going to raise him? You're going to feel that bad about it? She's like, you didn't even recognize him back at the heavenly official court, but now that you know what he possibly is, you think you're going to take responsibility? Oh, she's like, you know, she said, I have said he's not your kid. You're still pushing. He's got nothing to do with you, so stop worrying. So there is the question of, is it or is it not? But Zhan Lan does not want him involved. She's like, at this point, she's like, we're both ghosts. We both are on the run. I don't want to get you involved and get you in trouble when you don't have to be. And so it's just like, oh my God, like I'm rooting for Feng Xin to step up and be this fetus spirit's baby daddy and to get back with Zhan Lan, but I just don't know, right? And then Qi Rong is just like, well, if it's not Feng Xin's, then it must be the spawn of some other guy, right? And Qi Rong is just so awful when he says his own son was carved out of his mother's belly and turned into a ghost. I can't believe people pray to this shitty sun gifting Nanyang. The more you pray, the more your sons are going to be. And then he gets cut off. So that's like adding insult to injury, is the fact that if Nanyang is truly, you know, known as being a martial god that people pray to for fertility or something like that, to know the irony that he possibly is the father of this fetus spirit, it's just irony of all ironies. And then Zhan Lan like stomps on his head. And the thing about it is, in the picture with the fetus spirit, what's kind of funny about it is you can't quite see it. You can't quite see it because it's cut off. But you see down in the corner here, that's Qi Rong. That's Qi Rong getting stomped on. It's quite humorous. He's getting stomped on there. And that's when Guzi wakes up and is like, don't step on my dad. And that's when Qi Rong breaks free when Ruyi, like when Lian uses Ruyi to go catch Zhan Lan, that's when Qi Rong breaks free. And that's when he tries to use Guzi like a shield, right? And then that's when Mount Tonglu erupts again. And Hua Chong is like sitting there grabbing his head. Zhan Lan is grabbing her head. Like all the demons they're all getting another wave of an arousal of demons. And the tremors are stronger than they have been in the past. And Qi Rong, of course, takes that opportunity to run away. And Fu Yao's like, let me go to find him. And it was so heartbreaking because Lian tries to help Feng Xin, and Feng Xin's like, just don't ask me, get away from me. Like, this is not your business. And Hua Chong tells him later, he's like, yeah, this is not your dealings. Like, I like that Hua Chong tells Lian later, he's like, look, everything that's going on between Feng Xin and this lady and this ghost baby, you had nothing to do with it. Like, you weren't around when this happened. This is not your fault. Do not take responsibility. And Lian's like, yeah, you're right, but it kind of is my responsibility because of what happened with my banishment. I kind of led Function to this point where he couldn't even tell me about this lady he liked because he was afraid about the money situation we were in. So Lian's like, I am kind of responsible for it. And it's just like, but at this point, Hua Chong says, you know, Lian gets like rejected by Function and is kind of taken aback by how really strongly Function is feeling about all of this, which, you know, his entire world's been thrown upside down in a moment. Again, the bad luck of Lian and Hua Chong. Everybody around them is having the worst luck. And it's like, oh my God. But Hua Chong says, who turned your wife and son into ghosts? If you've got fire, go burn the right person. I love that phrase. I love Hua Chong being like, if you've got fire in you, direct it towards the right person. Don't direct it towards somebody that doesn't deserve it. And Feng Xin looks over to Fu Yao, who is instantly furious. Now, does Feng Xin know that that's Mu Qing and not Fu Yao? And here's the thing. He's like, what are you looking at? You don't actually think it was my general. I was like, now here's the thing that Mu Qing says. He says, what is this bloody luck? He referring to Mu Qing. Mu Qing only saw that woman as a remnant citizen of Shanle and had some relation to the royal family, so he lent at a helping hand. He wanted to save that fetus spirit, but who knew it was deeply ignorant? And not only did it not want to be saved, it turned into a fierce. Nothing good came of it, but he ended up stepping in shit. Mu Qing, had he known, wouldn't have bothered. That brat doesn't even know who gave birth to it. And you think it knew who killed it. So, what Mu Qing is saying at this point, as Fu Yao, he's saying that Mu Qing, he recognized Zhan Lan. Which totally makes sense now, because yeah, Mu Qing would have recognized Zhan Lan from back during Volume 3 when they all saw her. So they both looked at each other being like, oh God, we know each other from back during Shanle. We have history. So Mu Qing recognized her as royalty and felt the need to help her. He felt the need to help her. And so the thing of it is that he tried to help the fetus spirit, but not only did it not want to be saved, it turned into a fierce. If he had known, it wouldn't have bothered. The brat doesn't even know who gave birth to it, and you think it knew who killed it. So Mu Qing is saying, Mu Qing is not responsible for the fetus spirit, only tried to help. Because he had a loyalty to Zhan Lan as a fellow Shanle citizen. So I can believe that. Okay, that makes much more sense now. That makes more sense that Mu Qing, because we've seen Mu Qing helping out in the alleyway all of the orphans and stuff. Mu Qing's brought food to them just like he brought to his mother. So even though Mu Qing's a tsundere, even though he doesn't want to admit it, and he is closed-minded, he is all those things Lian said, but Mu Qing, when he does decide he wants to help someone, he does legit help them. And so he decided he wanted to help Zhan Lan at the time, but things went awry. And he's like, if I knew how much bad things would have happened, I wouldn't have even bothered. So what we don't know is we don't know who is responsible for killing Shosho or whatever his name is. It's not Mu Qing. I don't think Mu Qing is responsible for turning him into a ghost, but we don't know who is. That's the big mystery. Who is responsible? Nobody knows at this point, right? And he's like, your general calls this bloody luck just this. How can people who suffer even worse luck bear on to live anymore? And Feng Xin's like, why is it like this? How did it become like this? Like, Feng Xin is just like, he doesn't know how it got to this point, but he's so distraught and he just doesn't want to do anything with Lian, and he just like pushes Lian away and leaves. And Fuya, and I like that Hua Chong is like, bloody luck. He's like, he's like, people are suffering. Like, it's not just luck. It's just everybody's having a bad hand dealt to him. So it's not just you, right? And so the thing of it is, Fuyao's like, just let me go after it. And he says, he's like, just let me go chase after it. And Lian's like, the upper court's a mess right now. So what are you going to do? I don't think that the fetus spirit was slandering for the sake of escape. There's someone in the background manipulating it. And so Fu Yao's like, well, who cares what's going on? I'm going to go to Mount Tonglu and capture it. So what we do know, we don't know who created the fetus spirit and is possibly manipulating it. No clue. But we do know that Mu Qing is chasing it and Zhanlan to Mount Tonglu. So we're going to talk about this at the end of the chapter here, but we might see Mu Qing / Fu Yao again. So again, I do not want to know any spoilers. I don't want to know if it's actually Mu Qing. I know what you're thinking. You're like, Romania Black, you know that it's Mu Qing at this point. I know, but humor me. Please don't reference it in Mu Qing. Just don't confirm it. Just let me wallow my half ignorance until I find out for sure. Okay, that's all I ask. And so then they just like, and then as per usual, everything just seems to just dissipate. So Qirong's gone with Guzi. They ran away again. Zhanlan and the fetus spirit are being pursued by Fu Yao, who could be Mu Qing. Function is back at the upper court getting healed after his attack by his possible son or stepson. And Lian and Huachong finally find a legit end and sit down. And I love the idea that they're in the room with just the moonlight on them in the dark. And Lian is just sitting there scratching Ruyi, and he's purring like a cat. I love the idea of Ruyi being a cat. It's great. But Huachong saying it has nothing to do with you. And he's like, Function must have befriended Lady Zhanlan after Shanla fell and before he ascended himself. It was during the years of my first banishment. And Huachong's like, that doesn't mean you're at fault for how things turned out. And so Lian's like, have I ever told you about my first banishment? And he's like, no. He's like, I've never told anyone, but I want to tell you about it. He's like, the only person that followed me was Function after that. He's like, I had started out as a martial god, and by the time that this happened, most of my possessions that I had as the crown prince had been pawned off. Which we've had, and I like that Huachong tries to insert some jokes. He's like, even the sword that JUN WU gave you. And he's like, yes, don't tell JUN WU. He's like, yes. Hong Jing, he's like, yes, I know, keep that a secret. And the dozen gold belts. And so he thinks that Feng Shen, didn't just give Lan Chong the belt, that he probably got money, but he could have gave her money. She ended up with it somehow, right? Saying, I'll keep it for you for now. He kept the money there. He's like, I made him sell it for money to keep for himself, but it was out of guilt and fear. And so Lian reveals that Feng Shen was the only person that Lian had left at that time that followed him. And he was afraid that unless he paid Feng Shen or provided him some type of compensation, he was going to leave Lian. And Lian would be all alone. And so that's why he had them start to sell the things. He's like, I was bribing him. He was like, I was basically bribing him not to leave so that he'd stay with me. And in the illusion created by the fetus spirit, Lian had seen the protection charm, something that Feng Shen had probably gifted to Zhanlan. And after Shanla fell, all the temples and shrines were burned. Not a single soul believed in him anymore, but Feng Shen was still tireless in handing out the protection charms. But she held on to it because it was from Feng Shen. And it's like, he's like, I never knew if... And what's sad is that Lian's like, I never asked or took notice that he even liked anyone. And so it's so heartbreaking because Lian's like, I was so focused on myself, on my own. He's like, I was so high and mighty back then as the crowned prince, as the darling of the heavens, that I wasn't even thinking about the possibility of Feng Shen having a life outside of serving me. That he'd have people that he loved, that he'd have his own heart or his own life. He's like, I didn't even think about that. And so he feels, horrible about it, right? And he's like, it might not sound nice to gift a girl something someone else gave you, but at the time, the golden belt was probably the best gift Feng Shen was able to give. And so the thing about it is like, it's so easy to imagine how much he liked Lady Zhanlan. If he liked her so much, why did they split up? And he's like, whether or not the fetus spirit was Feng Shen's son, if that period of poverty made Feng Shen lose the girl he loved, Lian feels responsible for it. But here's where Huachong comes in to cheer him up. Because Lian feels pretty low at this point. He's like, Feng Shen and I were in such dire times when I was banished. and I was just trying to keep function around me so I wasn't alone. That he's like, I completely disregarded him trying to have his own life and could have screwed him out of the possibility of having something with JUN WU because he chose me instead. Now, we do know that there's some kind of ritual about the fetus spirit being used to like cause ascensions and stuff, and that again is an unanswered question with the fetus spirit. But Lian feels awful because he's like, it's my fault all this with function happened. It was because I was too selfish and didn't pay attention to him. But Hua Chong cheers him up, and Hua Chong says, you know, if he liked her, but they separated, then it was only like. It wasn't love. And I love that because Hua Chong is suggesting like, I was separated from you, but I loved you and I came back. I fought for you. So for me, it's love. For him, it could have been just like, maybe they didn't have the love that I have for you. And Lian's like, well, things aren't always that absolute. Sometimes it's not up to you to decide if the road is easy to walk. Lian's like, you know, love's a hard thing. He's like, that's not an easy road to walk. But Hua Chong says, well, I can't decide if the road's easy or not. But whether I walk it is entirely up to me. Which goes back to the title of the chapter, The Path That I Walk. Hua Chong's like, I've waited 800 years to get to you, Lian. And for whatever reason, he's like, and I know the path I walk is not easy to get to you, but I'm walking it now because I love you and I'm willing to do anything for you. And that's just, and Lian, you know, it's like his heart kind of, the knot in it unties, and he feels so uplifted, and he's just like, and Hua Chong's like, am I wrong? And then he's like, oh, you're so very right. I love that Lian, like, it instantly brightens him. They, like, lifts Hua Chong up into the air, and it's like, you are right. He's like, something so shameless. The way you said it, it resembles me from when I was younger. And Hua Chong's like, what a dream. I love that the two of them played around in the room for a while, like just laughing and having a good time. And he throws Hua Chong onto the bed. And it seems like I was like, okay, well, they're just going to go to sleep. It's going to be totally innocent, totally cool. And then suddenly, like the creepiest effing thing in the world, JUN WU just appears. JUN WU just appears, that there was someone in the room making tea. Now, how long JUN WU's been there? Watching them? It feels like, JUN WU feels like a father that like walked in on his son having a tryst with like his boyfriend and was just like, I'm just gonna sit here. And I feel like JUN WU feels like the dad that got like the phone, like picked up the phone, and Lian and Hua Chong are on the other end like having phone sex, and he's just like, so how are things going? And Lian's like, oh my God. Even though there was nothing sexual that Hua Chong and Lian were doing, it still had that vibe of just like, oh my God, they've been caught, right? But I'm not kidding. The moment he said Shanla and man replied gently, I really thought it was by Wu Sheng. Like that was the air of creepiness that was there. And I was like, ooh, but no. And Lian at first is just like, oh, it's just you, JUN WU. And then he's like, oh shit, it's JUN WU, and tries to hide Hua Chong. But Hua Chong is like, it's not necessary. He knows who I am. He knows what's going on. I cannot believe chapter 142, just the fact that we've had all this buildup between JUN WU and Hua Chong, like skirting around each other, around Lian, like they've been orbiting Lian, like crossing paths, but never fully meeting. And then it's just like the most nonchalant thing. MXTX is like, oh, they're just gonna have tea together in a room at midnight. What? How? Just how? And then, yeah, JUN WU. How long has JUN WU been there? Has JUN WU been in the woods watching the whole finagle with Feng Shen and them? Because he says, oh, he looks like your son, right? And Lian's like, how did you know what I was going to say? And then, yeah. And he goes back to sit at the table. And I love that Hua Chong never stops looking at JUN WU. He's always just warily like, I can't trust you to not try to hurt me. No. But what's so fascinating about this is that JUN WU does not try to hurt Hua Chong. I think the only reason that JUN WU does not try to hurt Hua Chong is because he knows that Hua Chong can't attack back, which is interesting, right? Because JUN WU, he doesn't attack Hua Chong because he knows that Hua Chong can't hurt him while he's in this child form. But I think he also knows that JUN WU knows that Lian respects JUN WU and that Hua Chong's not going to try to hurt JUN WU while Lian is there. So JUN WU knows that he's safe because Lian is there as like the buffer. He's like, it's almost like Lian is right in between Hua Chong and JUN WU. And JUN WU is looking at Hua Chong like, I know you're not going to hurt me because your boyfriend doesn't want me hurt. And I know you can't hurt me because you're stuck in this child form. So, and I know that Lian doesn't want me to hurt you. So we're just going to have a little conversation and be friendly because we can, because Lian's right here between us. What the fudge? So yeah. So the thing of it is, Lian knows that JUN WU is terrifying. If he unsheathes his sword, he is, with the intent to kill someone, he is terrifying. And Lian says under no circumstances does he ever want Hua Chong to face JUN WU head on. That is so terrifying. And also it's like the biggest foreshadowing, being like, is this setting up for JUN WU and Hua Chong to face head on? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. Since JUN WU does not seem to think that the Crimson Rain Salt Flower or the Black Water are nearly the threat the White Calamity was, I feel like he's okay with them being there. He doesn't want them going above their means, but he's okay with them being there. But like just this whole entire chapter was terrifying. Terrifying. And so he's like, let's just have tea. Like, take tea for wine and smooth over the situation. And so JUN WU is like, you know, I don't really want to talk about how things are, but he's like, I'm joking. Everything is, he wants to talk to Lian alone. And Hua Chong is like, I know shit's bad up there. You might as well just talk about it. Don't hide things from me. I love Hua Chong's like, come on. Let's just all chat together, right? It felt like a mafia boss meeting where Lian's just like, you guys know each other? What's up, God? Like, that's what it feels like, right? And so I love that Hua Chong gets off the bed, comes up to the table and picks up the key cup and is just like, you expect me to drink this? I'm not really interested in any of this. Like, no. And then they all just sit at the table. His appearance was young, but his expression and manners made you forget that he was looking like a child. And JUN WU was like, yes, I can't deceive you. And so they figure out that they can't stop Mount Tonglu from opening now. It's just gonna happen. And so functions return to the Heavenly Court, but things aren't good. Everything is in shambles. The southern blockade is full of holes. And so Lian's a little concerned at this point because he's like, there's all these martial gods that are fighting the different ghosts and things and trying to round up the other ghosts, and they're forming this like army. You know, Lian says one man could break through an army of millions, but he could not defend against an army of millions alone. Which again, that leads me to believe what's going to happen out of this random encounter. Lian's like, you know, one person can infiltrate amidst a big group, but one person cannot defend against a big group. Like infiltrating and defending are two different things. And Lian's like, I don't want to lead an army to defend. He's like, my track record's not great. I don't like it. If we look back at volumes 2 and 3, he's like, those weren't good times. I don't want to repeat that. So he's like, I'd really rather somebody else do it. And he's like, can any other martial god take up that task? And JUN WU's like, no, they're all gone. I like that he calls Chi Ying a kid. Like JUN WU calls him a child when he's like hundreds of years old. He's like, oh, he's such a kid. And I'm like, yeah, JUN WU is ancient. And he's like, these past few days have been really bad. Everything's in shambles and everybody's all different directions, right? And he's like, what can be done? And so Hua Chong kind of gets the idea of what they're thinking. He's like, oh, you guys are planning a suicide mission, right? So the idea is that Hua Chong has guessed what JUN WU's plan is. JUN WU's plan is to infiltrate Mount Tonglu and just start killing the strong ghosts. Because Hua Chong does this really cool little analogy with the flower pot of how Mount Tonglu works. Mount Tonglu, it's kind of like Mordor in Lord of the Rings. It's just this big mountainous area, and it just has levels. And the closer you get to the kiln, which is the flower pot, essentially in this analogy, the closer you get to the center of Mount Tonglu, the stronger the ghost gets. Because all the ghosts have been, by process of elimination, working their way towards the center. So naturally, you have your weaker ghosts on the outside. Your stronger ghosts who have killed other ghosts to get to that point are going to be stronger and stronger the deeper you get in. And then the idea is that once you get a handful of ghosts left over inside the kiln, it shuts up. They all have to kill each other. And if a ghost is strong enough after killing the other ghosts to come back out, they are the supreme ghost. But if they're not strong enough, they all get disintegrated and they just serve as like fertilizer for the next round. And so JUN WU's idea is that we're going to infiltrate Mount Tonglu, kill all the really strong ghosts, that only the weak ones make it to the kiln, and then they get in and that's all that's left over. What's kind of problematic with that logic, though, is how do you know if they're strong or not? And can you take into account, because what I feel like, from what we know in the story so far, is that HEADPHONE, who's the Blackwater, was one of those that was indeed like the strongest of strong ghosts. Like he fought his way to the center of Mount Tonglu out of pure hatred and killed all these ghosts out of pure hatred, and then was this insanely strong ghost that got stuck in the kiln and came out like the formula predicts, right? He's the one you don't want to happen. He just happens to luckily have a one-track mind of revenge. Hua Chong, though, never comes across as being like the same type of insanely powerful ghost before Mount Tonglu that HEADPHONE seems like. So he wasn't like, HEADPHONE had like the aura of the king around him. He was destined to ascend, right? Hua Chong doesn't seem to be like that. So Hua Chong seems like what we see him as a kid when he was alive was not this insanely buff, strong man. So unless we've missed something that we've not yet come across in the timeline, if Hua Chong died as a kid, we don't know the circumstance around it, then was Hua Chong not... I feel like HEADPHONE meets up the criteria that JUN WU is thinking of when you think of a ghost coming out of Mount Tonglu. Hua Chong does not seem to add up like that. So I'm kind of like, JUN WU, you think that weeding off the strong ghosts and only leaving the weak ones is going to ensure that none of them come out as supreme, but we know that Hua Chong has this deep love for Lian, and that likely fueled him becoming a ghost. So how do we know that some other ghost doesn't have the same thing going on and uses that same thing to become a supreme? We don't know. So it's kind of like you're really counting those chickens before they hatch from Mount Tonglu, JUN WU. Maybe, possibly. And so JUN WU is like, yeah, we have to infiltrate the gathering of ghosts at Mount Tonglu and slaughter them till at least only the weak ones are left. I do love the little visual representation that Hua Chong gives for how the kiln at Mount Tonglu works. And what I love is that it seems like the visual he creates represents himself, because Lian looks and the weeds were cleaned away one by one, and suddenly there was a little tiny red flower and a few unremarkable weeds that jumped into the flower pot and spin around the sides like little people dancing, and the red flower danced the wildest, and the kiln closes. So I feel like whatever Hua Chong as the ghost, when he was that red flower, was so passionate and so in love and so determined to get back out that within 49 days they have to break out of the kiln. So it's not that you're stuck in the kiln for 10 years. That's not it. It takes you like 10 years to get to the kiln. That's the thing. It can take you 10 years to get to the center. But once you're in the center, you're only there for like a month. And then you have to break out of the kiln, and then you're the supreme. And I love that the little red flower raises its face and Lian catches it. Like that visual representation, I'm sorry, but that, of Lian catching the little supreme. And he says, oh, so this little one is the new ghost king birthed from Mount Tonglu. And he says, yes. The slaughtering of ghosts at the beginning was a strengthening process. It can't be bypassed. You can't just skip slaughtering the ghosts. You've got to get there first. And if a ghost enters the kiln without being strong enough, they're suffocated, burned to ashes, and are fertilizer. So essentially, Hua Chong is suggesting that he had to kill a lot of ghosts to get to the center of Mount Tonglu. And that's how he was able to survive. Ooh. And so he says, your idea is to cut down the mighty and leave the weeds. There are only so many with the potential to become a ghost king. Once they're annihilated, the weak ones who remain can't break out of the kiln, even if they enter it. And they won't be recognized as ghost kings. And Lian says, will that work? Has it been attempted before? It sounds doable. And JUN WU says, no, it's never been attempted. The demons have always been stopped before they're able to gather. And Hua Chong says it's not doable. To fight under these conditions is no different than suicide. He's like, well, I suggest that you go do it since you suggested it. And JUN WU says he's going to do it. So that's insane to me that JUN WU was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Mount Tonglu. I'm going to go fight the ghosts and go on the suicide mission. It's just like JUN WU's like, I have no choice. JUN WU was like, everything's in shambles. It's all a mess. What else can I do? I've got to do this. I've got to go to Mount Tonglu, and I'm the only one strong enough to handle this. And Lian's like, well then who's going to take care of the heavenly realm while you're gone? You can't just leave. And JUN WU's like, well, you're going to do it. I was like, I can't believe that JUN WU suggests Lian taking over the heavenly court in his place. And Lian's like, no, that's not going to work. And he's like, no one will listen to me. And he's like, well, this will be a good chance for them to start. And Lian's like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. Like, I like that Lian stands up to JUN WU and is like, look, love ya, respect ya, cannot do that job. He's like, you cannot expect me. He's like, you are the one holding up the heavenly realm. All the heavens are held up because of you. None of the other heavenly officials can do this. He's like, if you're there, the sky won't fall. But if you're not there, the sky will fall. But JUN WU answered with his hands clenched at his side, saying, there's nothing and no one in this world who will fall only because the heavens collapsed. Once you're used to it, you'll find that even with whoever's lost, life will go on. There will always be new to replace the old. So JUN WU, interestingly enough, is suggesting that the heavens will be there. He's like, the heavens will be there. He's like, if the old fall, you will have new made. He's like, the heavens are always going to be there. The heavenly realm will be there no matter who's in charge of it. You can do this. He's like, I'm the only one that can possibly go to Mount Tonglu and stop this, so you're just going to have to do it. And if things get crazy, he's like, and JUN WU is basically saying, things are so bad now, they can't possibly get any worse. So you'll just have to deal with it. Let them die and get reborn. Essentially, it's the argument he was making to Lian back during Shanla falling. He's like, if Shanla falls, the earth is still there beneath it. Someone new will come along. It will get reborn. It will be fine. So it's kind of like the argument he was telling. He's like, Lian, have you learned nothing? It's just like when Shanla fell, Yongin took it over. One thing fell and a new one began. He's like, it's no different. He's like, you'll get the hang of it. It'll be all right. But it's so insane to me, the trust that JUN WU is placing in Lian right now. And it almost seems like it's JUN WU's way of also getting Lian away from Hua Chong. Is him being like, you need to go take my place in the heavenly realm, get away from Hua Chong, go do my thing, take my spot, and I'll go stop Mount Tonglu. And it's like, because he says, he's like, the thing of it is, to have a new ghost king born, it's nothing if it's another Crimson Rain Sought Flower or a ship sinking black water. But if it's another white cloth calamity, we are doomed. He's like, you've seen with your own eyes how difficult it was to kill a supreme like him. If it's not me who goes, there's no other way. He's like, my fear is that whoever comes out of Mount Tonglu is not going to be like Hua Chong or Heshan. It's going to be like the White Calamity. And with the heavenly realm and as much shambles as it is, we can't let that happen. So now I'm so curious. I am more curious than ever the backstory with the White Calamity. I'm like, MXTX, you damn tease. I want to know, but I'm going to have to wait. But I'm like, you tease that so damn hard. I'm like, ugh. Cannot believe it. You've seen with your own eyes how difficult it was to kill him. And Lian knew that this is not JUN WU being humble. To be in one's weakest state and trapped with millions of ghosts, and to be able to accurately pick out each and every one of the strongest to kill or subdue, he's not sure he could do it himself. It was only JUN WU that had the greatest chance of success. But this leave might take up to 10 years. What about the outside world? What about the upper court? Like, Lian's like, he gets it. He knows why JUN WU is wanting to go, because JUN WU has the greatest chance of success. They can't stop the gathering now. It's too late. So he's like, JUN WU is the one with the greatest chance of determining the strong versus weak ghosts. Lian's like, I probably couldn't do that myself. So he's like, but if JUN WU leaves, he's like, Lian's like, you ask me, the one with the worst luck, to take over the heavenly court? That's not going to work. He's like, no. He's like, you're putting a lot of faith in me, but that's not exactly well guided. And I like that Hua Chong says, who says there's no other way? Who says there's not? So here is my theory. I think that Hua Chong is, because Shi Lian sounded like he was ready to go to Mount Tonglu. The word suicide mission is like Shi Lian's vocabulary. It's like a second language to Shi Lian. Shi Lian's like, suicide mission? Well, what else haven't I done? You know, so Shi Lian's not afraid of going to Mount Tonglu. I feel like Shi Lian's been living it up in the ghost city. He's just like, what's a couple thousand more ghosts, right? I don't think Shi Lian has a problem at all going to Mount Tonglu and fighting the ghosts. I don't think that bothers him at all. He's a martial god. That's his thing. But his power is sealed, so what do we do about that? Like, that is the one thing too. And plus, he'd have a hard time identifying it. So Shi Lian was all ready to go to Mount Tonglu, but he doesn't want to take care of the upper court. He's like, I don't want a diplomat position. He's like, Shi Lian's like, I didn't even really want to be Prince of Shanla. He's like, you expect me to be king of the heavenly realm? No. So my theory is that Hua Chong is like, look, I can tell who the strong ghosts are. I'll go with him, and we'll go stop another supreme ghost from coming out. Because Hua Chong's probably like, I don't want to deal with another white calamity either. So that's what I think the deal is. I think that Hua Chong, I think he'll tell JUN WU, he'll be like, look, I care about it. He's like, I don't want another white calamity showing up. Sounds like a problem to me too. So I'll go with Shi Lian and we'll take care of this. And you go back to the upper court and keep things in line. And we'll just go from there. That's why I think it's going to happen, because I was like, I don't want Shi Lian to go up and take care of the heavenly court. No. But yeah, this could take like 10 years. This could take like a long time. So what do we do? I'm like, is Shi Lian, are we going to have like a time skip? Are we going to go through 10 years worth of things in the next 3 volumes? I mean, we could, but what? And then if he goes to Mount Tonglu, how is JUN WU going to release his seals? Is he going to release the cursed shackles from Shi Lian? What are we going to do? I hope you all know I can't wait. I just can't. I'm sorry. Nope, not going to happen. Can't wait. Not going to be possible. Going to have to watch it. Nope, going to have to be a thing now. But yeah. Oh my God, y'all. I'm floored. I'm absolutely floored. And I cannot wait to see what's going to happen next. So this set of chapters gave us so many questions, so much happening. There's still so many unanswered questions. I don't know what to do next, but this volume, it just gets better and better. The other picture, before we wrap this up, the other picture other than the fetus spirit was JUN WU in the moonlight with Shi Lian and Hua Chong, where he's just making the tea sitting next to them. And I will make note, Hua Chong looks freaked out, like, holy shit, there he is. There's JUN WU. And Shi Lian's like, oh yeah, hey, how's it going? And there he is. He's just in chaos. Yep. And so the idea, once you become... And okay, the thing is, like, Shanla, the sky will not collapse for anyone in this world, meaning the world will still go on. Once you become accustomed to the way the world works, you'll understand that life goes on even without those lost along the road. There'll be new to replace the old. If a new Ghost King is born, if they are another Crimson Rain Sought Flower ship singing Black Water, it's not an issue. But if they are another White Cloth calamity, the world will fall into chaos. You've witnessed for yourself how difficult it is to kill a supreme like him. If you do not go, there is no other way. So that line, you've seen how difficult it is to kill a supreme like him. But did they kill him? I don't know. So yeah, sorry about your ears. So I can't wait. I'm going to be reading this next chapter set very soon. It is going to be chapters 143 to 145, which is a nice little chunk as well. So yeah, but oh my God, y'all. Please no spoilers, but I am so curious to hear your thoughts down below with this insanity that is volume 5. Oh my God. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more heaven officials blessing. Bye.